Welcome back to Bread and Butter, where we're serving up the basics for Hearthstone improvement. This is episode 182. I am Tito Santana, and as always, I'm joined by Pylet. Pylet, how are you today?
Doing well. How are you?
I'm doing pretty well. And from the other side of the world, we have a favorite fellow podcaster of ours, blisterguy. Blisterguy, how are you?
Do you want me to answer that question honestly? I know you
Yes.
know already.
Yes.
So, okay. Last week, I was working from home on Wednesday, and I had my 13-year-old daughter home from school sick with me. She was not hit very hard with it, but it seems like she's brought me home a nice dose of COVID. So when you say, how are you? Not great. Not great, Tito. But I'm here. I'm here because I said I would. And that's what matters.
Well, first off, I apologize. I have to apologize publicly because last week I had given Blister Guy the wrong date, and I had said, okay, we're gonna have Deck Tech, and then we're gonna have our Battlegrounds episode, and then we'll have Blister Guy and you, and I thought I had the right thing, and then we're getting ready with Terry last week, and Blister Guy's like, so what do I need to do? I was like, oh, you need to come back next week. Terry was willing to get bumped for you, like it was fine, but like you said, no, I'm good for next week, so we're like, yes, do it, but. Since you're here,
which is
okay.
unusual, which is very unusual because you've been asking me to come on this podcast for how long?
Since we
Years.
started, basically, yeah.
Yeah. Like when you started, you're like, you could come on. I was like, I mean, I could, but I'm not sure where I would fit it in. And so recently, like I work from home on a Monday. Actually, I just called in sick today, which made it even easier. But I work from home on a Monday. I was like, I think I can actually swing it so that I squeeze it in as a lunch break on a Monday while I'm working from home. It's like, right, I better let Tito know. Like just right now, like later in the year, maybe it won't work. But like right now, I could say, Tito, I wasn't just blowing you off. I promise. I did say that I can be on. And so it was like, and he's like, oh, I have to push you back. And I was like, don't sweat it. I think I can make next week work as well.
Oh, and I never thought you were blowing us off. In fact, you even did the fight night with us, if you remember that.
Oh, I did. Yeah, that was fun.
That was a lot of fun.
That's Stephen Georgiou chap. Yeah.
But so, Blister Guy, what have you been doing in Hearthstone?
I got Legend with Egg Death Knight just before the weekend, which felt good. Which is funny because when I was listening to the Deck Tech episode, he mentioned that he'd been playing it, and at the time I'd been playing Egg Death Knight. And I was like, oh, I was going to have that, and it was going to be all the hipster guy who was playing Egg Death Knight, but now Deck Tech was playing it as well. And so after that, I think it was a coincidence. I kind of experimented with a few other decks as well. I think I'd made it to Diamond 5. It's like, oh, let's just try some other stuff because it's hard to tell before you get to Diamond 5 while you still have a multiplier whether you're actually winning enough or if the multiplier is carrying you. And so when I got to Diamond 5, I ended up sort of sitting at Diamond 5 for a while. I'm like, see, the deck's not that great. And so I tried various Warlock decks because I enjoy Look at this duo drinking at the same time. Sorry, that for audio listeners, both Tito and Pylet just took a drink exactly the same time. It was like almost Freudian. Like it's not even like one of them saw the other did it. They just did it instinctively. Anyway, so I tried a few other decks. I tried like Herald Warlock because I think what happens to me is I'll be playing a deck and whatever is the best against me, I'm like, clearly that deck is really good. Now, this is obviously wrong. Like, it's just whatever is good against you. Anyway, like, Cursed Chains on my egg. Rude. I want to play that deck. And so I tried Herald Warlock and was losing games. I was like, oh, maybe it's not that great. And I thought I'd try Refarm Warlock because I've never really, I don't think I've ever actually had the Refarm kill with Refarm Warlock despite winning games with it. Like, you always just win before you get to pull off the alternate win condition. And so I said, I'll try some more Refarm Warlock. And that was going okay, but not great. I'm still at the Diamond 5 floor. And I was like, maybe this Egg Death Knight was pretty good. And I should stick with it because I think at the time I was at around 940-ish Death Knight wins. But when Demon Hunter came out, I was like, I've got to catch up on the number of Demon Hunter wins I got. And I know I went hard on Demon Hunter at times to get to 1,000 wins. I was like, I probably didn't need to force it. And so when Death Knight came out, I was like, don't force it at all. Just play it when you feel it and not when you don't. And so I've been sitting at 800 wins, at 900 wins with Death Knight, going, it's fine, it's whatever. But this time with Egg Death Knight, I was like, I like this. I'm enjoying this. Maybe now's the time that we actually push towards 1,000. And so I was like, all right, well, maybe we go back to it. Oh, and the other reason was the reveal stream I did with Zeddy. We revealed Paladin, Hunter, and Death Knight. And Legend last month I played Hunter. So I was like, well, maybe each month I'm going to be playing the cards that I was part of the reveal for. So I was like, well, we've got to try this Death Knight deck. So we just keep pushing with it. So I got back on the Death Knight deck from Diamond 5. And at that point, I was really getting into the deck and really learning some of the weird plays you could do with it and like understanding some of the matchups a little bit. And I was like, oh, this is it. This is what playing the same deck over and over is good for. You really get into it and vibe with it. And so then it worked, and I carried it through to Legend quite happily. So I felt really good about that. Even though this was, I guess, technically a couple of days after I was had been infected with COVID, thanks to my terrible daughter, lovely daughter. Um, and she's 13. Terrible is actually still technically true as well. Um, and so I got that, and then the day after, I was like, "Oh God, I'm feeling really run down now." Is it just because I'm like, "Oh, I've got Legend, I can relax"? It's like, no, no, no. You've been hit with the horrible the virus of our current generation. But yeah, so it felt really good getting to Legend with that. But that, of course, meant that since then, over the weekend, it's like play a few games because I have quests to clear. But like, ugh, that's fine. Oh, also, I got to 999 wins with Death Knight when I hit Legend. I was getting close. I was like, is it going to sync up that it's exactly the same? And then just went on a win streak and got Legend. I was like, well, I missed it by one, and I still haven't got that last win. So I got to 999 like Thursday last week, and I haven't played Death Knight since. Just because I'm like, well, let's not just squander it on just one win. So I don't know how this is going to work. I'll probably do it on the podcast one day.
No, no, you do it next month for Legend story time. It's like you get to Legend, you get to your final boss, and then you switch to Death Knight, and then you win with
Well,
that.
so that's cheating. So that's a thing that I have as well, right? Like, so I don't know how many people listening won't know that I have a Hearthstone podcast as well. Clearly, I mean, I know you missed it, Tito, but like one of the things I do is I talk about when I get to Legend each month, the deck I played. I post on social media the deck that I played, and it feels disingenuous to switch to a deck at the last minute and go, I got Legend with this, but it was only 3 wins in a row. It was just lucky. And I did that once many years ago. There was like I've been playing Warlock a lot that month, but somebody played a Mill Rogue against me and it was really effective. I was like, oh, I just go try switching to Mill Rogue. And I went like 4-1 with Mill Rogue and got Legend. I'm like, that barely counts though. And it feels disingenuous making a post about that. It feels disingenuous talking about that. I don't know. Actually, on the podcast, it's totally fine because that's the whole story in itself. But if you just make a post on social media, it feels very misleading to say, I got Legend with this deck list. Someone's like, wow, you must have played a lot with that. It's like, no, not really. No, I just got lucky for a couple of games and got there. So I have this thing where when I get to like Diamond 2 or 3, I'm like, well, now I'm sticking with this deck because if I get Legend with this, I want it to be the deck that did actually carry me over a fair distance. And so if I'm at Diamond 2 with something and I fall back to like Diamond 4, I'm like, oh, great, I've got permission to switch to something else if I'm not feeling it. But I will push through if I'm at Diamond 2 with a deck just to make sure that it's a believable story, as it were, I think. So yeah, I can't next month change to Death Knight again. Also, apparently I have to do Paladin next month, which I'm not enthused about, to be quite honest. I'll probably just play
Yeah,
something else.
no one
Unless
around here
some
likes Paladin.
no, it's the worst class. It's just the most boring class. Also, it's probably a bit racist, I think. Like if you think about Paladin, right? They have this whole truth and justice and purity and stuff. And it's like, yeah, we've heard that before, and it was a racism thing, I'm sure of it. Anyway, I just don't enjoy Paladin in World of Warcraft or in Hearthstone. I've played it. So when Hat gave me the Paladin Murloc reveals, I was like, yeah, this seems like you. I'm like, really doesn't. I mean, we'll make a reveal with it, but it's really not my favorite kind of thing. Um, but look, I assume we'll have a mini set at some point soon. So maybe there'll be something else worth trying to play next month. Like if we have a mini set by next month, how far away are we? We're about 2 weeks away from the next month. So we'll probably have a mini set. It'll be worth trying to play whatever's fun in that, I think, than sticking with Paladin. Thank goodness.
Oh, but there's so much you can do with Paladin right now. You can do Doomsayer Paladin, you can do Mill Paladin, you can do Maiev Paladin, you can do all kinds of Paladin,
I agree.
Hamba
And
Paladin.
all of those things are Beatrix, and I like Beatrix. I do like that's the one thing I like with Paladin, but it's still like I don't like Maiev Paladin. It's just aggro Paladin, and I'm not a big fan of aggro stuff. It's good, and I saw somebody saying I think in the Coin Concede Discord that thematically, Maiev Paladin's very good because we're in prison and Maev's the jailer, so that's great. And I was like, yep, thematically it checks out, but I don't want to play it. If I was going to play a Beatrix Paladin, it would probably be with the Bruiser because I think that was one of the cards we revealed as well, or something more interesting than that, like the little Pyromancer, the one that does fireballs if more than 4 of them have died, like something like that. But I'm just not inspired to play that, so I'm sure I'd rather just play anything else. I'd rather just play 2-bit Rogue, and that's not inspiring either, is it? I'm a bit of a hipster with my deck choices. Like I can get Legend with the best deck every month, but that's boring.
Yeah, I'm a hipster as well, more and Pylet can be. but sometimes he's not. But Pilot, speaking of what have you been doing in Hearthstone lately? And I think Ray was right. I don't know if we're gonna have time for the main topic. We're not even out of out of the starting blocks yet.
So
So
before we get into what Pilot's been doing last month, I saw all the questions. I was like, that's fine. I don't mind that. I don't mind a deep dive into everything me, as we'll see. And then there was like, there's a main topic. I was like, ooh, good luck with that. Which is fine. Honestly, look, here's the secret to what podcasting is. Okay. It's parasocial relationships, which is the same as what radio used to be. You turn on the radio in your car on the way to work in the morning and you hear familiar voices. It doesn't actually matter what those people are saying. You're just hanging out with the people who are familiar voices. So, bread and butter. I mean, ostensibly, we're supposed to be getting better at Hearthstone, right? But you get better by playing and listening to some stuff. That's going to be there. That's fine. But mostly, what we're doing is we're just hanging out with people we know, and that's the fun of it.
Exactly.
I think that's totally,
you
totally okay.
you do get better listening to the show, people. Don't take him for that. You do get
I'm
better
not saying you
listening.
don't. I'm not saying you don't, but I'm saying that you can also do the same thing, like watching someone stream maybe and not feeling the same way. Like this is just a nice, cozy way of also discussing things like that.
It's also nice because a lot of times we have guests on that some talk really well and articulate and go into stories and tangents and all that. And sometimes we'd be like, "So, what have you been doing in Hearthstone lately, Priest?" Well, thank you for that. Pilot, what have you
Well,
been
you
up
have
to in
had Zeddy as a
Hearthstone?
guest, so that checks out, right? Like you've had Zeddy as a guest a few times, so it does check out that he's been playing Priest. He's a Priest main.
Yeah. I'm going to be that person this week because I haven't really been playing a whole lot this past week. I had my THL.
Thank goodness. I thought you were about to say you've been playing
No,
Priest.
a little bit.
Oh,
I've actually I talked about it last week. I don't know what has happened the past like 2 months, but I've become a broken Hearthstone player and enjoyed Soothsayer Priest and Egg Warrior and Egg Death Knight, and I don't know what's happened to me. Um, so it did come back to bite me. I did a couple runs of the Tavern Brawl just because I always enjoyed doing the heroic brawl, even though I know that you're not getting the rewards out of it. I just enjoy the competitive side of it. And was running into a bunch of mirrors. I'm like, you know what? This Egg Warrior's been doing really well for me. I'm going to take it in. I went 0-3 because the first game I hit a full on control priest and got Medivhed and ceased to exist and everything under the sun. Second game was the Herald Warlock. So they stole my egg and got my Kelos on turn 5. I died. And then I forget what the third game was, but I was done at that point. I'm like, I was half trying. So it came back to bite me, but haven't really been playing a lot. I had my THL match early in the week because my opponent said that they were available Monday and that was it. So they're like, we can play then, or I'll get a sub. I'm like, let's play. Um, lost two to three. Felt like I played well, other than I had one weird kind of out in the first game where I could have played around healing by not playing cards, and I caught it after the fact. And I think I would have top decked lethal with the face hunter the next turn. Um, but I don't know. They had a rogue mirror. They played 3 Jade Guardians, and mine were bottom 9, both of mine. So you don't win those games apparently. So just kind of been chilling. Just I've kind of voiced on the show before, this meta is kind of it's fine. I enjoy some of the decks. I just don't enjoy the matchups very much. Um, and I don't enjoy the decks enough to enjoy losing with them, which is, I think, kind of where I'm at. I don't have a deck where I can just jam and I don't care if I win or not. The Egg Death Knight was kind of getting there just because there's a lot of intricacies with that deck, and I probably need to come back to it. I was just too tired with outside of Hearthstone stuff to focus too much on it. Did play a little bit of the Chef Druid just because that's kind of in a spot to where it can beat some of the decks, but sometimes it just doesn't do anything. I did have a game I sent Tito right before we started recording, saying this was his fault because I faced another control priest where I got steam cleanered. It was an egg priest, actually. I got steam cleanered. They played Behemoth Mask on their eggs, and it was ridiculous. I don't know what happened.
it's a bit
It
rude.
was something. So been playing a little bit of that. I did play some of the quest mage just because I had like a double mage quest or whatever, and I'm like, yeah, sure. And there's less vipers, so you can actually play that deck again and not have your weapon get blown up and won like 4 in a row and then lost the next 4. So just typical things, kind of just waiting for, we'll probably skip the news since we have so much else to talk about, but we know that there's a patch coming up this week, so we'll see what that does and kind of jump in from there.
Yeah, to be clear, Pilot was saying it's my fault about Steam
Yes.
Cleaner, not Priest. I am not to blame for Priest. But so I have been playing good decks. Sadly, I'm not playing two bit rogue, but like I've been playing a lot of Maiev Paladin. I've been playing a lot of Hunter. I've been playing a lot of Z Shaman. And I've also been playing a lot of I am doing this because I'm trying to be a better THL player, and I need to play the good decks in order to win. Because when I bring the when I bring the Blood Unholy Herald Death Knight, it doesn't always go so well. Although we have one with that this season, but I've also been like, well, what's something that nobody is playing, and nobody is playing Triple Unholy Death Knight, and it's still a really good deck. So that's what I get to Legend with this season. That's what I've been playing a lot of recently. I came in Legend at like 2000 or something like that. It wasn't too bad. And more importantly, I think I'm 5-1 in THL this season between both my leagues. So this week on my legacy match, I'm playing and I lost my game one. I threw the first game because I rushed. Take your time. I could have cleared Kelos because I had 2 poisons with Rush, and if I would have hit the egg and hit the Kelos, it would have been fine, but I rushed, so I threw that game. Second game, I didn't have good luck, and then I'm in the middle of the third game, and I'm looking over at my stream, and I'm like, "My opponent is in my stream." So I was like, "Hey, bud, you can't be doing that." And I reported it to my, up my chain of command, as it were. But I wasn't looking to like, I wasn't gonna. It's a for fun league, so I wasn't going to like try to get a DQ or anything like that. But I was like, whatever. But more importantly, we reverse swept that, and we ended up still getting the win, and we won our THL match this year. So this our pro league this week. So
Oh, you did. We did.
no,
We
I
we
did. I don't
did
think the team
not.
did.
Team, we did not.
We did not.
You did.
Team,
Where there was only one set of footprints in the sand.
Yeah.
yeah. There's no I in
Tito was
team, but there's
carrying.
2 in winning.
True. Math checks out.
Now that I'm at Legend, and it's only what the 16th or 17th or whatever the heck day it is. I have a couple weeks left, so I am not sure what I'm going to do. If I'm going to try to dive into some Druid shenanigans or whatever, for I'm just going to try to take a month and maybe try to hit 11 stars, which I probably won't. So we'll see how it goes. But I've been doing pretty well with some of these decks, so I might just continue on. But
I think playing the good decks because you need to be good for the THL, very defensible decision. Like, you are not expelled from hipster Hearthstone club just because you chose to play the good decks, because you need to do that for practicing, right? And that's the thing with being a dad. You don't have infinite time. So when you're like, well, I got to play these things, I've got to be good at them for THL, and it's paying off, mate. So you made the good decision. Well done.
well, thank you, and it's been fun. To be fair, there also hasn't been a decent, really hipster deck that I have been kind of gravitating towards. I've been wanting to maybe bring back the Fable Druid card with the locations and the dragons and whatnot, and those
Ashara.
are fun. Ashara and Corona, and that stuff's my jam. And a lot of the other stuff in Druid has been a lot of fun. But yeah, no, we're staying away from that for now. But Ray, what have you been doing outside of Hearthstone?
There's things to do outside of Hearthstone.
Well, you play Warcraft for one
So
thing.
that's the joke answer. Because I know I have listened to Bread and Butter. I know that you were going to ask that, and I'm always like, what else do I do? The only other thing I do outside of Hearthstone, other than going to work and being a dad and all that, is I play a bit of classic World of Warcraft in my spare time. It was one of those things where I played it a very long time ago, and then when I tried to come back to the game, I didn't like the retail version. And then when they released Anniversary, again doing classic again, I was like, oh, that's the World of Warcraft I remember. And so I play it a bit just to enjoy the feel and the lore of it, and I enjoy talking about how the original lore of World of Warcraft compares to what we have in Hearthstone. So, but just when I get some spare time late in the evenings, I'm just generally noodling around in World of Warcraft, and I just hit level 70 on my druid, which is fun. So now I have a druid and a mage and a shaman at 70. So that's for anyone who's played that. That's clearly a bit of time investment, but that's what I've been enjoying doing.
Wait, so 70 is Burning Crusade though, right?
That's right. Yeah. So
Okay.
Classic Anniversary has now progressed to Burning Crusade.
Okay.
The when I originally played when it first came out, I played through the first part of Burning Crusade and then kind of stopped. That was when I burnt out. So what I'm doing now is basically reliving what's after where I burnt out back in 2008 or 2007. So it's been
Yeah, I
nice
burnt
actually experiencing the content the content that at the time I was looking through the window going, should I be playing again? No, that's not healthy. Don't do that. Here I am 20 odd years later going, oh, maybe a little bit of unhealthiness for a treat.
yeah, I burnt out during Dragonflight, so, I went a lot longer than you did, but then I think the burnout
Yeah.
was a lot harder because I haven't gone back yet. Pilot, what have you been doing outside of the game?
Yeah, playing a bunch of other games, kind of taking advantage of the last week before school starts for us, to finish up a bunch of the games that I had been playing through the summer. So I hit credits on Dragon Age Veilguard. So finished that game. Really enjoyed the ending of that one. I knew it was close when we recorded last week, and then like finished it the next day. So like, oh yeah, that was pretty close. And then also hit the credits on Splatoon Raiders. Still have all the end game stuff. There's a lot more end game in that than I expected from a Nintendo game. So been enjoying that and kind of the different gear from that and playing around with stuff. And then finally got back to Pocopia and hit the final credits for that just because it was just something where I just needed to just finish a bunch of quick little missions and quests. And it's just like I just need to get this done to just get this done, get the thing from it. That way I could actually enjoy some end game. So finished up all those and now kind of in that space of I don't know what next big single player game to start up next because Dragon Age was like a 60-70 hour game. So I'm like I don't know what to fill that time with now. I'm sure that once school starts that time will go away anyways and it'll tell me what to do, but yeah, really enjoyed those. Outside of that, not much. We had our work day Thursday for school, all of our meetings and whatnot. Have another work day Monday and then students on Tuesday. So we'll go from there and see what happens for the year.
Well, if I recall correctly, you have not beat Inscription yet, right? And
I have
also,
not.
Baldur's Gate 3.
So I don't have Baldur's Gate 3. I do not have it's on my wish list, but
Okay,
we'll
well,
see.
there you go. There's a plan, and who knows? Squelch will probably go back into Mass Effect again for another cycle. So, it's about that time, right?
Almost.
I was going to say, I hope you've been listening to Squelch. If you enjoy these other games,
Yes.
they like what do they call themselves now? The Video Games Book Club.
Yes.
They're great run through these games. Like I never have time to play other games, and part of that is going to be, I guess, the undiagnosed ADHD hyperfocus thing that keeps me playing Hearthstone and stuff. I keep thinking about other games and going, oh, maybe one day I could have time. Oh wait, no, I've got kids. I haven't got time for that. But listening to
Mhm.
them gives me like an insight into those games and following along, and I really do
Yeah.
enjoy that. Like it's one of those things where they're like, there are going to be spoilers here. It's like that's fine. I'm not going to play the game. I'm just going to listen to you and live vicariously through, and it's great. I
Yeah,
love
that's why I jumped into Dragon Age because I didn't have time to play along with the first three with them, but with it lining up with summer, I'm like I can play Veilguard with them. I'd seen that you didn't really have to play the others to follow along with what was going on. It gave you enough of the backstory and whatnot. So we'll see what they play next. I don't think they've said what they're playing next, and they've got what like 2 weeks left in Dragon Age probably.
But most of the time with the spoilers, you're never gonna like you're saying, you're never gonna even remember if you ever get to it. It's like if you say, "Hey, yeah," and at the end of the movie, Thanos kills everybody. Yeah, you might remember that. But for the most part, it's like if it's like, "Oh yeah," and Bob and Steve get together, you're like, "Oh, okay, I completely forgot about that." And then you might trigger your memory when you see it in the
Hmm.
game, like, "Oh yeah, I was supposed to remember that." But you don't usually go into the game being like, "Oh, I know this is gonna happen," because you forget about that. Just the ADHD and whatever just kind of goes right by. So I
I think they also have a lot of branching narrative stuff in there as well, right?
Yes.
Where I think sometimes you just end up with a different story to someone else as well. So I think there's still a lot to absorb and learn in those games, even if you've heard them talk about it, because they'll be talking about how they got different options
Hmm.
and different outcomes and things. So I think even then, I think that extra context also helps because you're like, oh, this is where my story is going. That's great. That's not the same as what Dano got or Storm Rage got, you know. So
Yeah, so for me, work's been fine. I just kind of came up with an idea for a new project where we're taking like we do a lot of stuff workflows in Lua, which is a language that when we have a simulation software that's in C++, and I work on a Java UI portion of it. And I was like, well, what if we took the Lua and we took the information from it and we made it into this visual thing and all this. And I'm not going to get into like details, but it was like I came up with this whole thing. I wrote up some requirement documents and all that. And I'm pretty excited about kind of like where this could go. So, um, getting to possibly start a project from scratch on some levels is going to be a lot of fun. Work with some people on it. So, normally, when I'm as a software developer, for most of my career, I've been a sole developer. So, I've written some pretty cool software in the domains that I worked in. But I've been working by myself and I had to do all the things. And I usually was QA and release engineering and I did everything. So to be in the kind of position to maybe start something new and also have work with other people, that could be a lot of fun. Because when you start doing software by yourself, you're usually very possessive of it. And it's like once you've been working on for something for 3 years, it's hard. You might be like, yeah, I really need help. But as soon as someone starts touching it, you're like, wait, slow down there. Maybe, no, let's not do that. So it's definitely hard to do that. So I'm hoping that maybe starting something from kind of scratch and having work with a couple other people could be kind of interesting. Aside from that, I told everybody last week I did the Magic the Gathering pre-release events. So then I was thinking, couple I think it was yesterday or either Wednesday, Friday or Saturday. I was thinking, hey, I know a lot about the Hobbit set now because I just the pre-release event. So I'm like, I wonder if maybe now I can start building some decks in Magic Gathering Arena. So I fired up Arena again, and I've been playing a lot of it. And my decks aren't really Hobbit related like I thought they would be. Like I made a couple of them, and then I deleted them and all that. But I have a I so one cool thing about MTG Arena is that it shows once you finish your quests, it sneakily puts achievements into the quest slots. So you're like, oh wait, I have to get if I gain 777 life, I complete this. And so it like gives you something to work on. And I didn't realize it was an achievement at first. I thought it was like a weak quest. And I'm like, oh wait, this is an achievement. But I didn't care. I was like, oh, this is great. So I made a deck that really focused on lifelink and all that with cats and all the stuff. And then I had another one with elves that I tried to make work, and I'm like, "Oh, I have this card that I know worked really well for me in the pre-release event, so I'm gonna try to figure out a way to make that better." And I'm not using too many of my wild cards yet because with Magic: The Gathering Online, you get like these wild cards that you can transform into uncommon or rare or epic or legendary cards. And I don't want to spend too many of them, but there's been a couple times where I'm like, all right, I need a couple of these. Let's we're going to use these, so let's do that. And then, so I've been having a real lot of fun with that. Had some weird things happen at home. With I had a screen door that so it's like a storm door, and I opened the door to go inside to go let the dogs out, and all of a sudden the glass shattered. It scared the crap out of me. But like, I don't know what happened, but whatever, it's fine. I ordered a new one. It's coming in a couple weeks, but no one wants to hear about that. Pilot, do we have any news this week?
Not really. They did update a bunch of the known issues, some of which we had kind of already talked about, like the skeleton key, large pink rectangle, and a couple other things that are up there. And then on socials, they've kind of teased in some posts and in some replies and comments that there is a balance patch coming this week, and that they did say that it will include buffs. Doesn't say which day. It wouldn't surprise me if that is on Thursday because of the Tavern Brawl ending on Wednesday with the Heroic Brawl, because they probably don't want to mess with that if people are paying gold or runestones for it. So probably look for that later this week.
I mean, I imagine this the schedule won't be around the Tavern Brawl. Patch schedule is a really finicky
True.
thing with servers and things. I think if it was going to roll out in the
This
Tavern Brawl, it would just roll
this
out in the Tavern Brawl. But I think like it usually ends up being vaguely Thursday
Yeah,
anyway,
I
right?
guess this
Or is it
Tuesday would
sometimes
be 2
Tuesday?
weeks from the
Sometimes
last
Tuesday.
content patch. For some reason I was thinking that it's only been 1 week since the BG's patch, but the 18th will be 2 weeks
I guess
from the BG's patch.
we'll see if there's a teaser tomorrow, right?
Yeah.
See if they do a teaser tomorrow, then we'll know it's probably going to be
Yeah.
Tuesday. which is confusing because I'm like, that's Wednesday my time. His calendar's difficult.
Well, I think sometimes so, like, sometimes it's you get that patch and they say, "Hey, we're gonna put a patch out today," and it's a Tuesday, and sometimes they
Hmm.
announce it on Tuesday, and then they give us more information on Wednesday, and then we get it on Thursday. I think it depends on where in the season we are, and I think if we're coming up onto the reveal season of class sets, then I wouldn't be surprised if we had, like, kind of a cadence of Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. So I'm and given what I agree with you on the Tavern Brawl, I don't think they wanna be doing refunds on Tuesday when the Tavern Brawl on Wednesday, so I would be surprised if we got the patch on Tuesday. I think we get the announcement on Tuesday, and we get the patch on Thursday, but who knows? We'll find out.
Yeah, we'll see. We're kind of in the spot to where they could go either way because in theory we're a couple weeks out from the class sets. It'd be the first week of September. Would be 4 weeks since the point two patch, which is typically a month in between. So kind of depends on what they need to do. They also might have enough stuff in this patch that they're trying to fit in that it goes to Thursday with all the known issues and bugs and stuff.
And so I have not done the Tavern Brawl. I probably won't. Not because I don't want to. I was going to. My plan was to log in and do one. But so as we've talked about in the past, we are very privileged as content creators where Blizzard provides us with codes, and usually we end up getting, the mini set or the sets or whatever like that. Never assume, but we do get them. So my need to require myself to do the quests kind of goes by the wayside. I usually say, yeah, I'll do the quests. They kind of happen naturally no matter what, so I don't really focus on them. But lately, once I've had like 1,000 gold, and if there's been a hero portrait in the store, I buy those. So I was like, oh, let's go ahead and go do the Tavern Brawl. I'm like, I have 757 gold or whatever. I'm like, I don't have enough, and I'm like, I'm not gonna pay money to do it. So I was like, whatever. So we decided not to do it. So that's fine. But Pilot, is that all for the news? Is it time to get to know our
Yeah,
guest?
that's all that I saw.
All right. So
All right.
you, Mister
Thanks,
Mister
guys. I
Blister
better
guy.
go.
Um, so so Blister Guy, and I think most people know you as Ray because that's your name is publicly out there. So if we sometimes oscillate between
Yeah.
Ray and Blister Guy, that's you know. Uh, before you got into Hearthstone, you had some pretty deep roots into Magic. So tell us about that.
Yeah. I mean, Magic obviously existed before Hearthstone. Um, I also played it in the Hobbit pre-release recently and went 3-0, which was nice
Nice.
with a deck I wasn't confident with. When I was building the sealed deck pool, I was like, oh, this is not great, but it turned out to be an amazingly good deck. And my last round opponent, so at the point where you're 2-0, he's like sits down, he goes, "So you're either a Lord of the Rings fan or a Magic fan?" I was like, "Okay, cool. So you don't know me? That's fine." There are a lot of people in Magic in Australia who don't know who I am now, but if you went back 10 years, there was a lot of people in Australia who did know who I was in the Magic scene. I started playing around Revised, so I was probably 16 or 17, I think, when it came out in New Zealand. I think that was one of the earliest expansions they had as they came out in New Zealand. So we didn't have the initial wave, but I started playing for a bit, then decided it was dumb and stopped playing. Then Ice Age came out, and a friend said, "Hey, I'm going to start playing this." And so we both got a sealed deck and started playing. And then he counterspelled one of my spells, and I was like, "I'm stopping playing," which in retrospect, you're like, yeah, it's always been a thing, right? And then I think Mirage came out, and I really liked the artwork for Mirage. And I don't remember what year it was, but we're probably talking 1998 ish. So it's a very long time ago. And I liked the art for Mirage. And then the next set, Visions, came out, and I also liked the art for that. I was like, oh, you know what? Maybe I'll start playing. And that's when I started playing again. And I played competitively for a while. It took me a couple of years to do well enough, but in 2005 and 2006, I represented New Zealand at the World Champs as part of the national team. So I did play a lot. Now, being on the New Zealand national team is not nearly the same as being on other national teams from other countries because New Zealand is kind of small, but it still got me to the open stage. Um, I think also around 1998, 99, we discovered the internet. And one of the early things that we had for Magic on the internet was a website called The Dojo. Terry Sang, by the way, was a well-known name on there. And I remember that, being a name I saw a lot amongst others. I was like, I could try writing about things. So this is a tangent, but like when I was in high school, I sort of focused on art and music and things because I was terrible at spelling. Like, nah, there's no hope for me in the written world. I can't spell to save myself. Notwithstanding that in the English language we spell color with the letter U, and America doesn't. Like, what hope is there for me? Um, but once I was actually at sort of university level studying graphic design, computers invented the red squiggly underline. So it tells you when you've spelled a word wrong. It's like, oh, maybe I can write things. So I was like, oh, maybe I'll try writing stuff for a website. And I figured the dojo would not accept any submissions, but there was another website called neutralground.net, because, why spend it for a big URL, that was run by a store in New York and a guy called Brian David Marshall. Now, if you have ever been involved with Magic, you'll have heard of him, because he's, I was going to say, formerly known as the Magic Hall of Fame historian or something like that. Lovely guy. But he ran the website, so I submitted articles to him, and he published them. And then after a while, he stopped doing articles on the website, so I started sending them to Star City Games, which is I assume it's still a big website for Magic, but it was for a long time. So I was writing articles for there on and off for a long time. And so I got relatively well known for being someone who wrote. And so when I got to go to the World Championships the first time in 2005, I'd reached out to my editor. Actually, it was before that. My editor had been flown out to Australia for a Grand Prix and had found my name in the pairings and said, he came up to me, and you'll have to forgive the worst American accent you're ever about to hear. He goes, "Ray Blisterguy Walkinshaw?" I was like, "Yeah, do I know you?" And he goes, "How do you not know me?" And at this point, I realized that his thick Coke bottle lens glasses were hiding a face that I did recognize, and that was the editor for the website I wrote for. And I was like, "Oh, Ted, I'm so sorry." And he's, "How come they're flying me out here when you could be doing this?" Because it is a long way to go from the US to Australia. I was like, "That's a really good question, and I don't have an answer for you." And I said, "But if I don't make the day two, I'll help you do coverage maybe. I'll try it out." And so I did that, and I kind of enjoyed writing about the game. And so a couple of years later, when I get to the World Championships, I reached out to Ted and said, "Hey, I'm coming to the World Champs. I'm the alternate on the team, which means there's 4 people on the team. 3 of them are playing in the team's day, which is like the 4th of 5 days. So on the 4th day, I've not got anything to do. I could come help out in the coverage." He's like, "Yep, sure. I'll put a good word in." I don't know why I've stopped doing his American accent now, other than that it was horrendous. And so at the end of the 3rd day, I went to find the backstage area, and I saw Mark Rosewater. Now, if anyone knows Magic, he's like the head designer, and he's the most well-known person in Magic. And anyone in game design tends to know him because he's been very prolific writing about game design for decades. And so I saw Mark Rosewater. I was like, "Oh, hey, hi, I'm Ray. I go by blisterguy. Do you happen to know if there's this guy backstage I'm supposed to meet?" He goes, "Oh, blisterguy, I've always wanted to meet you." So one of my favorite brags is that Mark Rosewater, the head designer of Magic, introduced himself to me by saying, "I've always wanted to meet you," because I've been writing for these websites for so long. And everyone in this space kind of knew each other, except that weird guy from New Zealand, because we've never seen him at an event, because the events are on the other side of the world. So I was this sort of like mystical character they'd never heard of. And so because I had just been able to put myself out there writing and been vaguely okay at the game, not that good, I think I was more entertaining than anything. I had this sort of mystique about me, and everyone kind of got to know me. And I went backstage, and they're like, "Oh, I've always wanted to meet you." And Brian David Marshall was like, "Oh, do you remember you used to write for my website?" I was like, "Yes, how would I have forgotten that I'd written for this guy?" Anyway, and so I've got these great friendships through Magic, through doing that, through the coverage space. And from like 2006 through to about 2019, I was doing event coverage for Magic all around the APAC region. Like, Ted was right. It is much cheaper to fly a guy from New Zealand to Japan or to the Philippines or whatever than it is to fly someone from the States. So they flew me to all those events. And, occasionally they would fly me to a bigger event in the States or whatever. But I just got really well known from that. And so at that point, after we'd started a family, I had a child, I was like dying down from playing Magic, but I was still involved for doing the coverage. And then when Hearthstone came out, I was like, "Hey, this is a card game that might actually fit my time." And so it sort of dovetailed that way. But I'd just been playing Magic for so long, been so well known for it, that I had a name behind me already. It's kind of like cheating, really.
So when you started playing Hearthstone, did you stop playing Magic? Like I know you said you did your pre-release, and they should have known that you were. Yeah, you should have when they said, "Hey, are you a Hobbit fan or are you a Magic fan?" You said, "I'm from New Zealand. They made the movies there." Shut up.
That is
But
literally what I said too, because I didn't want to give the game away. Like, it seems very rude when you sit down against someone to say, "Actually, I've played at the World Champs twice," because a lot of people are kind of just kind of green at pre-releases, and I don't always do well, but I generally do pretty good because I have a lot of experience playing Magic. I had kind of stopped playing Magic 2006, 2007ish. I was dying down. Like, I'd been to the World Champs twice, and like there is more you can do there. But at that point, I was like, "Oh, I'm kind of exhausted from all of this." And I think that's when I first started playing World of Warcraft as well. So at that point, my competitive Magic playing had dipped down. And then in 2008, I moved to Australia because I'd met a woman over here, and we've since started a family. So clearly that worked out all right. So I was not playing Magic very much then. It was basically just going to pre-releases and playing. And so whenever I sit down at a pre-release, someone's like, "Do you play a lot? Do you play Friday Night Magic?" I'm like, "Oh, I mostly just come out to play at pre-releases." You can see their eyes light up, like, "Ah, yes, fresh meat who only comes to pre-releases." I'm like, "Good luck with that, pal. I'm good at this. I mean, good enough." And this last round opponent at the Hobbit pre-release was actually a tough fight. It was the toughest fight I had that weekend. Everyone else was a bit of a pushover, and it's not their fault. It's just that I've got 20 odd years experience playing competitive hard games, and I don't know, you get good at these things, I guess.
I went 2-1. I was pretty happy because I should have went. I possibly could have went 3-0, and the fact that it was the first time I went to play Paper Magic in like 10 years, I was like, at least I know more about card games now. And I really hope one of these times you go to one of these pre-releases and someone's like, "So do you play a lot of Magic?" You'd be like, "Do you know who I am?"
No, I would not do that. That's just not who I would not. So what's funny is, and this is going to be dredging names out of the hat that a lot of people aren't going to know from the Magic scene. There was a Magic player called Gabe Walls, who I think has actually passed away. So this sounds terribly disrespectful. But he was he was a very animated character, well known in the competitive scene. And another player called Gary Wise, who was from an older time. So Gary Wise was a very prominent, famous player in the early days. Gabe Walls was from the subsequent days. And this is at the 2006 World Champs. It was on the fourth day. I was helping out with coverage again. And I walked up to their match. They were just sitting at the table. And I had like some paper and a pen. And I get to the table and Gary Wise goes, I said, "What is he?" No, first he goes, "Give me a piece of your paper." I was like, "No, this is my paper." He goes, "Don't you know who I am?" And he was kind of being tongue in cheek. And so I said, "Yeah, I know who you are. Don't you know who I am?" And he's like, "What? Who are you?" And Gabe Walls goes, "Well, this is Blister Guy." And Gary Wise goes, and you have to pardon the language, I'll try and censor these. "You're effing Blister Guy?" He goes, I was like, "Oh, yeah." He goes, "You used to badmouth me on forums." I'm like, "Oh, no, 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 not really." Not really. But it was like, it's not that that beat it out of me, but I'm just generally not the kind of person who will beat. "Don't you know who I am?" But he started it, right? Like he said, "Don't you know who I am?" And I'm like, "Well, this is going to be fun. Let's play this game." And it was just wonderful that Gabe Walls already knew who I was and was like, "Yeah, this is Blister Guy. Didn't you know this?" And Gary Wise was like, "I do know your name. I've heard of you." So it was that whole thing again. Like there was this mystique about me, but people didn't know who I was. And then afterwards, after Gary had dropped out of the main event, we hung out backstage and were just chatting for ages about what he was doing there and things like that. It was great. Got on well with him. But he was also one of those people who was very larger than life. And in those early days in Magic, it was all about braggadocio and fronting and being tough and all that stuff. But they're all lovely people when you chat with them afterwards and things. It was great. But yes, so I've done that once and never again. I'm not the kind of person who will brag or speak well of myself. That's a very Australian New Zealand thing. They call it tall poppy syndrome, where if you were to brag about your accomplishments, then everyone else around you is obliged to tear you down. So you don't tend to brag about your accomplishments. And also, like if you wanted to think from a competitive standpoint, turning up to a Magic event and saying, "Don't you know who I am? I'm really good," looks really bad if you then lose. And when we're talking about card games, there's enough RNG in a card game that you can lose quite often. It's all about having a positive win rate, and that's about it. But also, there's something to be gained from saying, "Oh, just come and play at the pre-releases." And they're like, "Great, I will thrash this guy." And then when you beat them, it's because they underestimated you. So there's a tactical advantage to not playing my hand, as it were, as to how famous I used to be.
So when you did your coverage, when you did your writing, and we're already taking tangents. What
I'm
did
fine
you
with
just write
tangents.
about the events, or did you write about other things in Magic? Did you write about strategy? Like what was so? I'm assuming that your transition from writing about Magic to not writing about Magic anymore led to your podcast. So what did you used to write about, and how did you
No.
stop? No, really.
Yeah, no, but we'll get to that. That's fine. So when I used to write the websites, a lot of the time people would write what they call tournament reports. They'd go play at a tournament on the weekend and they'd come back and they'd write about it. Round one, I faced this person. Round two, I faced this person. This is the deck I played and stuff like that. They'd present it and they'd tell you through the story. And, spoiler alert, you assume someone's writing a tournament report because they did quite well, but not always. I wasn't always playing in a tournament, but I think I did some tournament reports and things. At some point, I sprung on, and this is hilarious because I don't want to take claim for this. I sprung on the idea of talking about the Magic Online marketplace every week. And I was doing updates about what cards were gaining value and not gaining value. And I started doing this thing on that. But because I had kind of a cheeky narrative to the way I do things, I'd make jokes and I'd be funny about it. It's not like the official website could do a thing, but one of is a Hall of Fame Magic player, Frank Carsten. He said to me, he goes, that column you were doing where you were talking about the market values actually inspired the main company who was making Magic to actually hire me to do a regular column about the value of the secondary market of Magic Online. And we were basically ripping you off. I was like, I'll take it. That's totally fine. I feel like I had a great idea. So I would do all kinds of weird, all over the place stuff. Sometimes I'd just be joking about the latest deck I'm trying to play and things like that, or just trying to be humorous. But doing event coverage was totally different because what you are doing then is you're writing about a match that you're watching at any given time. Like we're watching Gabe Walls and Gary Wise play, and this is the deck they're playing, and you sort of go through a play-by-play and things. And that can get a little bit dry, so you tend to get a bit creative about how you're trying to describe the narrative of how that match is going. And after a while with event coverage, we realized that just having round 1 feature match, round 2 feature match, round 3 feature match was kind of boring and people weren't that interested. The only thing they would click on is the top 8 playoffs. These are the deck lists they played and people are going to copy those. That's the only thing they were actually interested in. So we started doing more flavor pieces where we would interview people. Here's some people who have turned up in cosplay and things, take photos of it and stuff. So the event coverage was very varied and very flavorful and stuff. But you still had to write a lot about what the game was happening in the game and things, which became a bit of a challenge towards the end as well because I wasn't playing very much competitive Magic. So it's like, I don't even know what these people are doing. I mean, I would try to stay up with what was happening, but when COVID hit and I stopped doing coverage, there was a real sense of relief that I no longer had to think about Magic anymore. Not because I didn't like Magic, but just because it became too much to actually contain it in my head, like everything that's going on metagame-wise. And so it was entirely different, but that didn't dovetail into starting a podcast about Hearthstone. So, which was your question. See, I did remember. What happened with that? We're going to talk about Kelly Diggs. Kelly Diggs was a guy I met at the World Champs in 2006. He was working as an editor for Wizards of the Coast at the time, and we just got on really well. And so at the end of the event, he was due to fly out the next day, and I was going to fly out a day later. So we stayed up all night playing with leftover draft cards, and we thought it's going to be funny. We're going to go back to our own homes and go, oh, I met my soulmate in Paris, because that's where the World Champs was, which is funny in itself, right? It was a guy called Kelly. Oh, it was a guy called Kelly. Yeah. We got on famously. And so we both went home to our respective places and told these stories about how we'd met our soulmates. And I was like, yeah, whatever. And then like a couple of years later, there was an event in Japan, a big event in Japan. And he was again brought out as an editor for them. And I was doing coverage. And I got to the airport, got on a bus, the next stop, they all got on the bus. I said, oh, it's Kelly again. And so we hung out there and we again got on famously. Each went home to our respective places. It's true. Our soulmate is actually our soulmate. We hung out again. It's 100% like BFFs for life. Anyway, years later, one time I even went to Seattle where he was living with my wife. And so Kelly and I got together for dinner with all his friends and my wife. And it's they can't be right about the soulmate thing. By the end of the dinner, everyone's like, it's kind of disgusting how much they're meant for each other, which is, we don't understand it. Anyway, at some point I went out to an event in Seattle. I think we were having a coverage conference or something. And Kelly's like, oh, hey, I'll tell you this. My wife and I were actually expecting in about 3 months. We're going to have our first child. I was like, that's really amazing. I'm not supposed to tell anyone else yet. We're also expecting our first in about 6 months or something like that. And so Kelly and I obviously got on really, really, really well, but we can't talk about Magic on a podcast or anything because he officially worked for Wizards of the Coast at this point. So he's not allowed to talk about Magic. So it's like, what can we talk about that's not Magic? It's like, we can talk about our experiences with parenting. So we started trying to do a podcast together as an excuse just to hang out and chat. And scheduling made it really tough. And I had to edit the things together and it was painful. And we were just like, this is really tough. And, obviously nobody's listening, even though ostensibly the whole thing was just so we had an excuse to hang out and chat. But like whatever audiences either of us had was from Magic. So if we're talking about not Magic, people are like, meh. And also I think, the fact that we were getting into parenting and a lot of people who might be our followers at that point weren't really into parenting, weren't really into it. Whereas I think if I did a parenting podcast now, I'd have a lot of people who would listen just because they wanted to hear me talk about parenting. So we started trying that. It didn't really work. And then around the time my daughter was 2 then, so we're talking, a year and a half after we sort of stopped doing podcasting, I was like, I kind of feel like I want to engage in the community again because I wasn't writing for a website. I was doing coverage for Magic, but it meant that I had stopped doing my own personal writing. I was like, what if I just did my own podcast? And I'd already started playing Hearthstone and feeling bad about spending time playing Hearthstone because it's a hobby. And when you have a family, who has time for hobbies kind of thing? So I was like, what if I recorded a podcast myself, just as myself? Then I wouldn't have to edit it together. I could do it walking to work because that's the one time in the day where I play a lot of Hearthstone and I don't have time to do anything else that'll fit. And I thought maybe that could work. And I'd already heard, so Mark Rosewater, the head designer of Magic, we've already mentioned him, keep up. He had his own podcast called Drive to Work, which, yes, it sounds very familiar, where he would just be driving to work and record himself talking about game design. was like, Walkinshaw, that's my last name. Walk to work, this would work. I'm walking. We just rip off Mark Rosewater. Brian David Marshall, again, mentioned him already. He had his own podcast in New York with a guy called Mike Flores, who was a. If you've ever heard anyone mention the Magic the Gathering article, Who's the Beatdown? Mike Flores wrote that. So he was a very well known name in Magic. So him and BDM, Brian David Marshall, had a podcast in New York they would record on the streets of New York because that was the only time they could do it. They would always record on the corner of Waverly and Gay. They were the two streets. You'd always remember that. And because they would always be recording there was always some dude who would bring out his motorcycle and just start warming it up, and they'd be complaining about the motorcycle. I was like, so you can do a podcast with this ambience in the background, and that's part of the character of the podcast. It's like, I can record while walking the street. Like the traffic noises, that's just part of it. And you're allowed to do it because they did it. So solo podcast, walking to work with traffic noises. It's like, I'm allowed to do this. Let's try this. And that was I just wanted an excuse to have an audience again and to be talking about Hearthstone, so I didn't feel bad about the fact that I was playing Hearthstone. And I think this also tied back to the reason I started writing about Magic in the first place was the invention of the internet introduced me to the idea that I was on the far side of the world from everyone else and kind of alone. Like I had friends where I was, but I was isolated from everywhere on the rest of the internet. And so subconsciously, I think my whole thing was to engage with everyone, was to just start writing so that, hey, I'm here, pay attention to me kind of thing. And my impulse to start the podcast, I think, was also that again. So I just started recording the podcast and going, is anyone out there? And everyone was like, yeah, we're still here. We remember you from doing this. It's great. And so I had an immediate audience who remembered me from Magic. And that thankfully was a bit of a kickstart to it. So that's how it started. And it wasn't because I stopped Magic. It was just coincidence.
How hard is it? So you decided to do this 3 days a week, and you've been doing this 3 days a week for however long. Why did you decide to do 3 days a week? How hard is it to keep that motivation to do 3 days a week? And have you ever thought about stopping doing 3 days a week or even stopping the podcast at all?
So 3 days a week happened by accident. In the first week, I was like, okay, this is easy. Let's just record a couple of these to make sure that I have enough in the bank in case I don't have time for it. It's like, great. And I keep remembering that I did 3 in the first week and reposted them. But apparently when I go back and look at it, I didn't. I did spread them out a little bit. But I was used to the rhythm. It's like, well, if I'm walking to work every day, I can record 3 times. It's fine. Like the accident was I set myself up such an easy way to do this, which was you don't have to edit this at all. You don't have to prepare much for this. All you have to do is press record while you're walking to the train station and you're done. And I was like, great, that's easy. And so I did 3 and I posted them and I kind of enjoyed doing it. So it kept going. Now, as to how easy it was to keep going, that actually got kind of difficult because when we would have a vacation, I'd be, oh, I've got to keep doing episodes. And so I'd record episodes while we were away on holiday, which would be a bit of a strain on the family. So in the last couple of years, I was like, okay, I've been doing this long enough now that I'm allowed a holiday every now and again. So sometimes there'll be a week or a 2-week break in the podcast because I'm on vacation. But for the first 8-9 years, it was continuous. I would always have episodes out on time. And as to stopping, I don't want to stop. So I think that the desire to stop isn't there because the whole reason ostensibly was to engage with the community. And I fear that if I stop, I'll no longer have that. And I don't think that's necessarily true. I'll probably find a different way to engage. But I do worry that if I stop, everything goes away. And so I don't want to stop. But does that mean it feels like a chore to do? A little bit sometimes. Like what'll happen is there'll be an evening I'm like, oh, I've got to prepare for the podcast tomorrow. I've got to get a deck list ready that I'm going to play on the podcast or whatever. And I'm like, oh, I better do that. But it hasn't become so much of a chore at this point that I wanted to stop doing it. There have definitely been times during like the Christmas holidays where I don't record for almost a month. And I'm like, well, this feels nice not doing that. But I'm not at the point where I resent it or anything like that. And I have thought about what does it look like if I ever stop recording the podcast? And realistically, what I thought was, what happens if Hearthstone stops? Because I feel like what's more likely to happen is that Hearthstone stops before I stop. Because at this point I've been doing it so long and it's such a habit and I enjoy doing it that I worry that Hearthstone stops. And so I have wondered to myself, would I do something else? Would I keep recording the podcast but talk about something else? Would I keep talking about Hearthstone in this frozen state now that it's stopped? I don't know. But I have pondered all that stuff. So I don't want to stop. I'm not planning on stopping. And I have wondered what it looks like if I get to like 70 years old and I'm still trying to do it. I mean, one of the interesting things is when I started doing the podcast, podcasts were an audio-only medium. But as evidence now, people do this in video a lot. So I'm like a dinosaur in the podcasting space because it is only just still audio for me. But I have also considered, can I get a drone camera that follows me and films me? Does that work? can I get meta glasses and film it while I'm walking? I'm like, there's some problems with that, obviously, because I walk to a train station when there's a lot of people and I should probably be filming people. That's kind of weird. But I have imagined what that would look like technology wise. I have pondered what 10 years from now, still doing the podcast looks like. And I still feel like I would be doing something. I just don't know what exactly.
And maybe at some point you'll transition and be like half and half or something like that, or maybe you'll start. Maybe you'll become a podcast like Squelch that transitions their identity but keeps their identity or something. You know,
Yeah. Well, I don't know how much they kept their identity, but they did transition it successfully in a sense because they are still doing a thing. But I think they had the same thing I did, which is that they just wanted to be hanging out and chatting. And so they found a way to keep hanging out and chatting. And so if I did pivot what I was talking about in the podcast, it would just be so that I could continue chatting with my audience and getting that feedback loop. And I think we would all probably still enjoy that. Like if Hearthstone stopped, that audience is going to be finding something else to do. And I imagine some of them might be going, well, what's this guy going to do? We'll follow him. And I don't know, maybe I would just be trying to talk about various different games that I'd tried, or maybe I'd start talking about the news and politics. Not that I'm really into politics, but maybe like I can have someone living in Australia's point of view of what's happening. Like there's all manner of things I could talk about. Like the bottom line is I can talk, so I may as well.
it,
Who knows? I mean, that's the thing is like we just don't know where the world's going, so or what that's going to look like.
it's one of the interesting things too about this the space we're in is that we are video game podcasts, and like we've been doing this for a while, and we're newer than you are. Obviously, you've been doing it for since the dawn of time.
Everyone is newer
But
than I am.
what happens
The
when
only
these
podcast
games
that's been going
die
longer
and
than
you
me.
develop these?
I was going to say the only podcast going longer than me at this point is Coin Concede, and none of the hosts that are on Coin Concede were on it when I started. So I'm technically the longest running Hearthstone podcaster in Hearthstone, as it were, at all. Which
Yeah,
is
we're down
weird
to
when I
only
say
a
it out
few
loud.
too. Like I saw a post
Mm.
from somebody, I think the other day. It's basically like Born to
It's
Be
like 5
Wild,
hosts or
Walk to
something.
Work, Bread and Butter, and yet we still can't find an audience. And a couple other things, but we're working on it. So
Look, I think part of that also is I think just the nature of where the world is at as well. Like the fact that podcasting has evolved to the point where it's professional video podcasts these days means that it's really hard to have backdoor podcasts or like homemade podcasts look like this. It's really hard for people to get into that when they can also be watching really polished things. Like, and a lot of stand-up comedians have figured out that you can just basically do podcasts, and then people are like, "Wow, we love stand-up comedians. We'll watch that." So I think it's a very broad space that's hard to crack into. But like, I think there's definitely an audience there still. And like, if your main MO is to make enough money podcasting to quit your job and be a full-time podcaster, you wouldn't be talking about Hearthstone. There's definitely audiences, some quite unsavory, that you can tap into if you wanted to do that. But I don't want to do that. So,
no,
like
we
I
don't either.
every day I'm fending off emails offering me sponsorship things for the podcast. I'm like, nope, not interested. That like I'm not putting ads in my podcast unless it's enough money for me to retire from my job and do this full time. And even then, I'm going to resist a little bit.
Yeah, no, we don't. I don't think Pilot or I are looking to make enough money to retire on. I think we're just making enough money to, if we can somehow make enough money to cover costs of the podcast,
Yeah, pay
then
the
we're
bills. That's it.
okay. Pay the
Yeah,
podcast. If this could be self-sustaining, that would be great. So
exactly.
one thing. So besides you, I think the only other really solo podcast out there was Off Curve, and then I started to do a second podcast where I was doing Talking Hearthstone, and that comes and goes depending on how much time I have. But doing that, you would go through your games. You were very unique. Is it like out of all the Hearthstone podcasts, there used to be, I think Born to Be Wild used to have something at the end of their podcast where they did some games and stuff like that. But you are the only one that plays games, and I did a little bit, kind of emulating and all that. But you have taken that, and I think that kind of became something that became interesting and I don't know what the right word is, but like it became endearing to the visually impaired community is because you
Yeah,
would take a Hearthstone game and you would visualize it for somebody listening on the audio. Because normally when you watch a stream, someone talks a little bit, maybe talks through their plays, maybe not. They make moves. They don't necessarily
they
explain them
respond to
all.
chat.
They respond in
They
chat. They're
they talk
talking,
with their chat, right? But they don't talk about the game that's happening in front of them.
and
So
you have taken that
interestingly,
and made
I
it
would
to a thing. So how does
yeah.
that?
So
How did that? Oh, God.
I was not the first one. There was a podcast called Hearth Coach. A guy called Dan. He was an older guy who was into heavy metal, and he wanted to learn how to be good at Hearthstone. And I can't remember what his coach was called. The other guy was a coach. I can't remember his name. but they were an affable pair, and one of them was basically coaching the other one how to play. And so they would have gameplay every episode where the other guy was coaching Dan how to play, and Dan was a much older guy and um, had plenty of struggles in his life, so he was pretty green at the whole Hearthstone. So they were talking through the gameplay as they were doing it, and so part of that informed how I was approaching it because there were some things I don't think they did very well. Um, Also, Cream Puff was a Hearthstone streamer for a while who also tried to do a solo podcast where he would be doing gameplay. And he realized very quickly that it's harder than it sounds to be narrating the gameplay. He'd spend a lot of time thinking about his play and just sitting there going, which was like this tick thing that he'd do. And like, that's not as compelling for an audience, right? Whereas I, with my general verbal diarrhea, as I'm sure all listeners now are quite well and truly aware of, um, can just like the gameplay is happening and it's fast, and Hearthstone is fast paced enough as well that there's almost always something to be talking about what's happening in front of you, and you can't keep up with it. So I'm just like nattering away, describing what's happening, not keeping up. And I think sometimes part of the appeal is that I'm not keeping up, but I'm trying to describe everything that's happening in the game as it happens that matters. What's happening in my hand, what's happening in their hand, thinking strategically around that and reacting, and then trying to cross the street and then looking back at my hand to see what had happened while I was doing that. Like there's this, it's no longer specifically exactly the gameplay itself, but it's also the theater of someone trying to play while walking through traffic. Oh my God, so who was tooting at the horn? Oh, what's happening in the game? You know, it becomes this whole thing. And for the vision impaired community, because most streamers would not be talking that in depth about what was happening in front of them, and because I had no video component, that I felt I had to describe everything that I was covering. And this did actually dovetail back to the Magic coverage that I was doing, because we would be doing written coverage of what was happening. You had to figure out what mattered in each turn in the game and express that in a written sense. So I was already familiar with the idea of watching something and trying to replay it verbally, well, written, but also verbally, so that somebody could understand what was happening. So think I had that experience. And to me, it's something I don't give myself enough credit for, is that it's harder than it sounds to do that. I would probably have a lot more of a chance doing Hearthstone casting for professional events if I wasn't in such a weird time zone. And also, I live in Sydney. What you can see behind me is part of the apartment. At any point, if I was trying to record something here, speaking like this, I would wake up some kids not far from here. So I can't do that in my apartment realistically at all. But I think Blizzard would definitely have me be someone who could just be chattering nonstop on stream in their Masters Tour stuff if the opportunity arose. It just won't arise anytime soon because of that experience I have narrating the gameplay I have. And the vision impaired community are like, great, this is fantastic. We can visualize what's going on in his game because he's explaining it. And they kind of like that, which I think is fantastic. I love it. I love that they're on board with that. I didn't expect that to be a thing, but I think it's amazing. And one of the things I worry is that if I do end up transitioning to some kind of even partial video component, I worry that I will lose that audio only side of it that does work for some people. So I'll always be consciously aware of that. And I think even if I'm doing a video, I'm still going to be over commentating on my own progress through the game and what's happening. Uh, hopefully in an entertaining way.
To be fair, I don't think you can not over commentate on whatever you're doing because that's just kind of who you are. But like,
It
it's
is.
like it's just basically like, oh yeah, and okay, so I'm gonna play this card 2-2. I think I have this next turn. I'm probably gonna do. Oh, my wife is texting me. Let me see what's going on. I gotta go pick up my daughter from.
Yeah.
Okay, that's fine. Oh wait, I'm down 5 life. What just happened? I don't know. I guess we're gonna have to figure it out. Okay, now what are the? So it
Oh,
is.
and the funny thing is, right, is like if you were watching a really competitive, serious player, let's say No Hands Gamer, you're watching him stream. He's focused. He's locked in on what he's doing. He knows exactly the decisions he's doing. He's got a lot of experience. And if he's talking about what he's choosing to play in the game, like that's kind of disjointed from what most of the audience have as their game experience. Most of the audience may well be playing on their phone, and they may well have a dog that's just knocked over its dinner bowl, or kids running around screaming, or a wife that's just texted them, or someone banging on the bathroom door at work. Because like that is the tangible experience that a lot of the Hearthstone audience have, is trying to play but being distracted. And what I'm doing on my podcast does reflect that, because that is also my life as well. So I think that's one of the things that people find endearing about that, is like, hey, this guy's playing just like us, but also
Mhm.
he gets legend while doing it. So like I could be like that. And I think that's where a lot of the audience have faith in what I'm doing. And also I think partly why I enjoy it is because I feel like I'm presenting an authentic picture of what it's like to be a dad playing Hearthstone, I guess.
And one of so I've done some of the similar things in the style of you, I would say, not quite doing it as you did, but like when I did the Talking Hearthstone, and when I do it, sometimes I try to play games and I do the thing. And when I try to make videos, I kind of draw from that as well. And if I'm doing, like, say, a deck guide on something, I feel like I do a lot better playing when I'm sitting here and I'm explaining, and I'm like, I take the time to be like, okay, I have these cards in my hand. This is what I decided to do. What else can I do? I can do this. I can do that. I can do this. My opponent just did this. And when you actually are that hyper focused on the game and you're trying to explain it to somebody that like you're not necessarily just talking with chat or whatever like that, you are trying to explain the game to somebody else. It's kind of like when you have, as a developer, when you're like, it's called rubber ducking, right? So when you have something and you're trying to figure something out, you're looking at it and you're staring at it and you're like, I don't understand what's going on. So you talk to somebody else, or a rubber duck, as they say. You'd be like, okay, no, this is what I'm doing. I'm doing this. I'm doing that. Oh, I forgot that. And talking out
Hundred
loud and
percent.
trying to explain it to somebody else makes a huge difference. And for anyone that doesn't, anyone who watches casters do Masters Tour or listens to Ray talk and walk to work podcast. By the way, if you're not, I'm going to stop you guys right now. If you are listening to this podcast and you are not subscribed to Walk to Work, stop, pause the podcast, go subscribe to Walk to Work, because you always have something to listen to, because it does it 3 days a week. And it is a fantastic. I don't listen to it every day, every episode. It's hard to keep up with unless you have that time. I don't have that time, but I do catch up all the time when I can, and it's such a great thing. So go do that right now. Now, have you ever thought about retiring? Just giving it up and like and
Yeah,
maybe focus on other
no,
things?
no. So like as I mentioned before, it's just this like part of why I did it is because I enjoy the feedback loop of the engaging with the community. Because of the isolation from growing up in New Zealand. Like growing up in New Zealand, when Back to the Future came out in New Zealand to watch, it was like nearly 6 months to a year behind the US, but nobody knew because we weren't connected to the internet, so we didn't know these things. But once the internet came along, just keenly aware of how behind we were on everything. And so movies come out instantly all around the world now. Part of that is going to be because you don't have to physically ship reels, but also because you can't release a movie 6 months later down under because everyone knows what's happened so far. So like the internet made me keenly aware that I was so isolated from the rest of the world. And so I have, I think, an addiction to that feedback loop of being involved in the community. And I think doing the podcast is what gives me that. So I feel like I don't want to ever quit. Like there could well be a reason that I need to quit at some point, whether it's because my employer finds out and they think I'm spending too much time doing it, or whether my family life just gets to like, if sometimes like, knock on wood, but sometimes you have an accident and one kid is very badly hurt and you've got to spend a lot of time and attention on that. Maybe your parents get old and you've got to spend like there are going to be a lot of things that could come up in life that mean that I don't have time to do the podcast anymore. And if I have to give it up even temporarily, I'm going to miss it a lot. So I don't ever think about giving it up. I do ponder what it looks like when something has to stop for me, but I don't want to stop. That's probably unhealthy.
No, I think that's fair when it's kind of become just something that you do and when it's something you enjoy. That's just natural.
Yeah.
Um, so where did the name Blister Guy come from, and why are you so particular on it being spelled one word in all lowercase?
Well, one word because it is
Mhm.
one word. So when I discovered the internet, I was studying graphic design, and one night I was in the lab, and I was like, "What else is there on the internet?" And I found a Nine Inch Nails chat room, and I was like, "Cool. Oh, what's a username? Oh, I don't know." Now, before I played Magic, I played Warhammer 40,000,
Mhm.
and those miniatures come in blister packs. For some reason, the word blister was on the tip of my tongue, so I just typed in blister, and it accepted that. Then, of course, it turned out that this was probably like 8 o'clock at night in New Zealand, which, if I remember correctly, is somewhere between 2 a.m., 4 a.m., depending on where you are in the States. So there was nobody online to talk to. I was like, well, this was a wash. But the name Blister stuck in my head. Now, not long after that, I tried to register an email address. I think it was Hotmail, and Blister at Hotmail was taken. And around that time in the Magic community, people would always refer to people as a guy. Oh, I just played last opponent, super lucky guy. Oh, this random guy. It was a guy. This I was like, Blister Guy at Hotmail. And by the way, you could try emailing that address. I don't use it anymore. But Blister Guy was there. That was done. Now, again, Byron David Marshall's website. When I sent articles to that website to be submitted, for some reason, our university email system would truncate something at the end of the email. And I think either I left off my name or it just cut off. And so all they had to go on was the fact that it came from blisterguy at hotmail.com. So they posted it as by blisterguy. I was like, all right, I guess I've got a username. This is back in the day, remembering Terry saying, we all knew everyone by their name. It wasn't people didn't have usernames that stuck, but my articles went up as by blisterguy, and so it did stick. I was like, oh, I guess that's my name now. And just as an aside, the reason lowercase was I did graphic design. I really quite liked the Bauhaus, which is a German graphic design company, as it were, from like the early 20th century. They did a lot of stuff in lowercase. If you ever look at Nine Inch Nails stuff and it's all in lowercase, it all ties together. I really liked it being in lowercase. And I think the lowercase b for blisterguy looks a lot better than the capital B. I used to type on the internet only in all lowercase, partly because I was lazy, but partly because I thought it looked cool. So I think blisterguy is lowercase, but like, that's one of those things that gets away from you. You don't get any control over it. The fun aside on the name blisterguy as well was because I'd gotten well known for writing about Magic as blisterguy as opposed to my real name. When I started doing event coverage for Wizards of the Coast, they were like, okay, well, we need your real name, but we're going to put Ray Blisterguy Walkinshaw. But I was the only person who was allowed to be known by a username. Otherwise, everyone would want one, and then they wouldn't know why someone didn't have one. And this was, again, before everyone was known by usernames on the internet. So I was Ray Blisterguy Walkinshaw on all this event coverage for Wizards of the Coast, and the only one who had their username. And then like a decade later, everyone is just known by their username in like the event coverage space. Like someone's commenting, like announcing the Masters Tour, you know their username, you don't know their real name, or maybe you do know their real name, but everyone knows Artosis and Edelweiss and all that stuff. Like it's the username that everyone goes by. So I was accidentally well ahead of my time because of that. And I do appreciate that you've got my name on the screen here with a lowercase b because it just looked better.
I actually think that the username aspect of things has actually hindered esports because it's getting into mainstream at least. Because I think, like, even
Probably.
like when you knew like Yaz, everyone knew that was Carl Yastrzemski or whoever in baseball. And now, with like, especially when COVID hit, I thought esports was going to hit big, but I think that when people's learning, when they say, "Who's this?" Oh, that's No Hands Gamer. Oh, that's Bloody Face. Oh, that's whoever that doesn't resonate with that being like Steve Jones or whatever. It makes it something feels foreign, and I think that really
It's
was a
less
hindrance
approachable.
there.
Mhm.
It's less approachable
I don't
unless
think
you're
that's
already in there.
I don't think that's the only thing that's gotten in the way of esports though. I think it's one of those things where esports was competing in the already crowded space of sports, right? Like the world of sports and watching sports, it's obviously a huge thing, and different sports for different countries and things. But like everyone watches sports, that's just what the common person does, as it were. So esports was already trying to encroach on that space that was already well and truly taken. So it's kind of difficult, and I think that's where streamers have been more successful because they're not trying to compete with the idea of esports. They're just competing more with just watching TV or entertainment as opposed to being sports events. And I think that's where esports kind of came undone, if it did. Like it's still a little bit successful. And yeah, I think the usernames do make it a little less approachable, but also we've gotten quite used to usernames for musicians and artists as well. Like there have been a lot of artists like Eminem, that's not his real name. We all know that his real name is Marshall Mathers, but we all knew him as Eminem. Like that's the same thing. That's a username, right? Like there's a lot of famous people who have stage names that we can be used to. And I think that can work with esports as well. But if they're a faceless person and their name can change, then it is hard to keep track of, I guess. But I think there's a lot of reasons esport didn't work or hasn't worked as well as people would like. And I think primarily it's that it's trying to be something that already exists, and that thing is already taking up a lot of that space.
Yeah, so in USA, a lot of sports revolve around gambling. And when COVID hit
Yeah.
and there was nothing to gamble on, I thought esports was going to become the thing because everyone's going to like, oh, we can still do esports, we can still gamble on it, let's go. And it just never kind of really found its footing, and that's okay. But I thought that was going to be the thing. Like COVID was going to bring esports to the forefront, but it just never happened.
So what's interesting is the gambling doesn't make the sports companies a lot of money unless they have endorsements from gambling companies. Like the thing that makes the teams money is the endorsements, and the endorsements are sometimes with gambling companies these days, but it's often with other things. I think the other problem esports had was they were like, okay, we need endorsements. That's how we're going to make money, and the products that they were getting endorsed by, like computer peripherals like keyboards and fancy mouses and things. There's just not as big of a market for that. The only people who want that are the people who are also trying to play esports or play the games. Whereas, someone watching American football or soccer or something, they probably don't have a lot of aspirations to play the game themselves, but that game is advertising beer to them. They like beer. So the problem was that esports wasn't also advertising beer. And in a sense, because the esport thing is attached to a game that can't be seen to be advertising beer or gambling or whatever. And I think that's the thing they missed was that they were trying to move in on a market that has already got that covered and is already daring to basically advertise beer at people. And that's the hard part to compete with.
Yeah, but you could have advertised beer at esports. I think the gambling.
Well, that's the
I
thing,
think they
right?
miss an
Games are
opportunity.
for kids. You can't advertise
Yeah.
beer.
It's a little harder when, it's a team full of, 16 and 17-year-old kids, playing
Yeah.
shooters because that's what it is.
But I think this could be a whole topic of like why esports hasn't like I really thought esports had an opportunity to get a foothold during COVID and it didn't. And I think it could be a whole episode. But that's by the
A
way, we're
lot of
not gonna
games, a lot of games got popular during
Mhm.
COVID, but the esports side of it, like streaming, was huge during
Yeah.
COVID. But it's just that esports itself was not. And I think partly because like organized esports is difficult to make, to actually get together and organize. And also the whole thing that they've been working on, which is like get some players together in an arena and do esports there, has suddenly been turned on its ear by COVID.
Mhm.
So they had to also figure out how to adjust to that. And I think it was really difficult to pivot to that. But a single esports person streaming on Twitch, that was so much easier to pull off. And that's why I think that side of it got a lot bigger.
what would have won everybody over is if we could have somehow figured out how to make an esport out of Animal Crossing. But
Nope. Well, yes, Animal Crossing and Among
Yeah.
Us, I think.
yes, Animal Crossing,
Yeah.
Among Us, and Wordle. Esport Wordle. Let's go.
Yeah. What was the other one as well? There was another game like that. I can't remember what it's called, but it was everyone all running at once and falling off platforms or something.
Oh,
Fall
yeah,
Guy.
Fall Guys.
Yeah. Like those would have been the opportunity. Like if you could have an esport around that, and it's kind of difficult to do. Even though like stuff like Squid Game is effectively that whole vibe again, a whole bunch of people competing to see who's the last one standing. So it's interesting. There are a lot of parallels between all the stuff and how this could or couldn't have worked. But I think the problem with the esports industry is that it's too kind of immature. Like, and I don't mean that they're childish. I mean that it's just they're too new to this. They don't understand what makes all this work, and they're competing against well-established industries covering sports
Mhm.
that have been around for decades. So it's hard, but that doesn't mean it's dumb. And I think esports, as it were, online gaming being broadcast, has a big future ahead of it. It's just got to figure out what it's doing.
And for anyone that's worried, we've already decided we're skipping the main topic tonight. This is gonna go too long, and it's okay. We're gonna
I,
save that for another
I
one.
Tito like outlined a bunch of questions and I skimmed over them. I was like, yeah, you're not going to get a main topic because you're not going to be able to get me to shut up. So
Normally we get a main topic even if we have these amount of questions because normally like we don't have someone as used to talking as you do. So it's not
so
as
someone who's so isolated on the other side of the world that as soon as they have an audience, they're like, oh my God, pay attention to me, and I won't stop talking.
oh, we love it.
Which, when we
And
get to the last question, we'll see is a problem I've had since even before the internet.
but on the bright side, it sounds like you have Mondays free, so we should be able to, or at least Mondays lunch free, so we should be able to get you on in the future
Sometimes
and get a
I
main
do, not
topic out of you.
always.
Yeah,
Yeah,
we have time. So you become kind
that's right.
of
Once we've gotten this preamble out of the way, right, we don't have to do this
Yeah.
again. We're like, call back to that other episode if you want to find about how and where Blister Guy came from. Get that covered. Now we get on with the main topic. Yeah.
speaking about where Blister Guy came from. You've kind of become a little famous in the Hearthstone community for your card reveals. How did that start? What was that like? And that whole process has like obviously it's kind of changed a little bit now, but take us through your card reveals.
So the funny thing there is, I saw that question. I was like, I don't know if I should tell you that this question doesn't work. I did not get famous for the card reveals. I got famous for doing infographics on Twitter. So I mentioned before how I carried an audience into Hearthstone from Magic. So I already had some followers, and I had followers on Twitter because of that. And so because I already had some followers, like there was just basically a day that came. I wanted to look at Raza Priest deck lists, and they're all different. And I was like, I can't compare them. And I like printed them out and put them side by side in Photoshop. And I was like, this actually looks really cool. And so I just posted that on Twitter. And everyone was like, that's really neat. And so I started making these infographics that compared deck lists. Like across these 6 versions of the deck list, these are the cards that are in all of the deck lists, and these ones are the options you've got. And a lot of people thought that was really cool and shared that on Twitter. And I had a lot of followers join because of that. Now, because of that, the local Blizzard office were like, oh, we've got a guy down under who actually has a following. And so they contacted me and they asked me to make some infographics for some Hearthstone event that was happening in Sydney. It was like, just make infographics of everyone's deck list so we can post them. Like, all right. So I did that. And so I got to know them that way. And they had been doing reveals. Like basically anytime there was a reveal season, one would get given to the Australian New Zealand community. And they were like, we don't know what to do with this. Like one time they picked a famous Australian magician to do one. All right. Paid him. He did one. They got some sand sculptor to do one. All right, we'll do that one. And then they're like, well, we know this guy, maybe he'll want to do one. And so they reached out to me and said, do you want to do a card reveal? I was like, yeah, actually, that'd be really cool. And then I was like, what do I do with it? And so I came up with a funny video skit with my daughter and I where we did a card reveal. And everyone was like, that was funny. We liked that. And I was like, cool. It took me a week to come up with it. We just did it off the cuff. And so because the local office had been struggling to find people to do the ANZ reveal for, they were like, well, just give it to Ray again. He'll do something. And so I kept having to come up with an idea at short notice and film it. And it looks homemade and it looks like raggedy, but it's fun. And I tried to be funny about it. And I think, like, I already had a following. And I honestly don't think the reveals got me much more of a following than I already had. Like, because what happens is you post your reveal video, someone screenshots the card and posts it on Reddit. So Reddit weren't seeing the video, they weren't watching it. And you mentioned how the whole thing has evolved over time, and it has. And part of that was that Blizzard were recognizing that when they give out these cards for creators to reveal, most of them weren't bothering. It was like, I'm a streamer. Oh, it's time to reveal a card now. Here's the first card. It's pretty good. Here's the next card. I don't think it's very good. Like, it's like nobody's actually bothering to do anything other than that one guy in Australia, but like we can't just pander to him. So they stopped doing it that way and they started doing like a community thing where they have like a round table to discuss the cards. And honestly, I think that works quite well. I think it's better than what's happening. Like, I was not getting traction from doing card reveals. The people who knew me were really thrilled that I was doing the card reveals. I'd had my daughter occasionally on the podcast with me in the background. So they're like, he keeps doing content with his daughter. This is amazing. We think she's hilarious. She is hilarious. But also she's 13 now, so I can't really have her on camera anymore. So it was already getting awkward, and I was doing reveal videos where she was doing the voiceover and I was in the camera to try and keep her off camera and stuff. And like I was already running into a sort of like a content thing where I'm like, I should not be including her because like she's of an age now where she understands what the internet is and maybe she's uncomfortable. And she was really enjoying doing it. Like, don't get me wrong. But it was almost like it was inappropriate to be including her, and I probably shouldn't have included her in the first place. But when we did that first one, I think either when my wife was pregnant at the time with our second child or they had just been born. I think she was pregnant. And so the only reason she was involved was because I was just trying to get her out of the house to give my wife a break. So like, all right, you and I, we're going to do a thing. We're going to go film a video. It's going to be great. And so I just kept including her. But the problem was, her little sister came along. And then it became a challenge to actually record something and do something that involved the oldest child without involving the other child. And how do you keep the other child distracted? And where are we going to record it? And the whole thing became a lot of really hard work. Now, it was rewarding because we both enjoyed doing it. And we put a lot of work into it. And we were very proud of the things that we came up with. But when Blizzard were like, I know this sucks because you enjoy doing those things and people love the things. The people who are seeing the thing that you do love it, even though it's not getting very much reach. Like, I don't know, maybe Blizzard could also have shared the videos if they wanted to get further reach. They're like, but we're doing a different thing. And part of it is not because of you, because clearly you were the one who was taking it seriously. And everyone else is not bothering. But like the fact that everyone else is not bothering, we have to try something different. And also like sharing stuff on social media doesn't have the same reach anymore. It's just algorithms and owners of social media sites and things. It's just all over the place. So they wanted to try the roundtable thing again instead, which is on one hand a shame, but also I get why they're going that way. And they have at least included me in the latest one, so I still feel like I'm part of it at least.
Yeah, we also got a card reveal for the show, but they basically were like, "Yeah, do it on the show and have somebody on there to talk." So we had pizza on, it was all that. So we weren't able to get really too creative about it. It was basically like, "Hey, we're going to talk about these cards on the show," and I felt like there was kind
Getting
of a missed
creative about it
opportunity.
is really difficult.
Oh yeah,
Getting
yeah.
creative is really difficult. Like anytime I was giving cards, like the first 24 hours of me going, what jokes can I make about this? What narrative is there? I have no idea. And then the next 24 hours of me going, oh, I think I've got something. But if you're just like, well, we're going to record on Sunday night, I guess we'll talk about these cards. Like, what can you do? And I think that was the problem, was like, it is really difficult for people in the Hearthstone scene to actually spare the time and the effort to actually come up with something entertaining for it. It's difficult. Like, it's not your fault. It's not anyone's fault. It's like, what can they do?
And we are grateful for the opportunity, but we also got crap cards. Like we got crap
Oh yeah,
cards.
that's how it starts. You get
Like,
crap cards when you're a smaller creator at first.
and 100% we loved it. Like we got what do we got? We got Dodo.
We did get Ebb and Flow. Ebb and
We had
Flow
one
is a
card,
good card.
Ebb and Flow, but Ebb and Flow was a staple
Yeah.
card. Ebb and Flow was like a non-exciting card that, hey,
And you
this
got
is a
to
good
reveal
card,
it.
We also got
and we get to reveal it.
So
alternate
that's the thing.
reality. That's
Like the
come
trick is
next
if you get a
week.
good
Oh,
card
we loved
amongst a
it. We loved
pile.
it. We loved the opportunity.
Yeah. No, it is, and it is great, and it
Mhm.
is very flattering to be noticed and to get to do it. But like, make no mistake, the reason I was noticed was because I was just some guy in the Australian New Zealand
Mhm.
space. I probably would not have been recognized or offered the opportunity to do a reveal if I weren't so remote and part of a remote office, right? Like if I was in the States, there's no way they would have picked this small podcast to do one. Although maybe in part because of the fact that I had been running with it and making a deal with it, that was how they were sort of saying, well, all right, we should give other smaller creators a try as well. And there have been other creators who have tried to make a deal. Like I know Alice Straza was definitely making entertaining videos when she got one to reveal and things. So some people definitely try, but it's one of those things where you try and you do it and you're like, okay, that was cool, but that was hard work. I can't do that next time.
Yeah, there's definitely a stretch where
And
a bunch of them were trying to do something, and then a bunch of them kind of strayed away from the game because I feel like Dexter before he left
Even Zeddy
said
did
he
it.
did.
Even
Dexter
Zeddy did an
before he
entertaining one.
left
Yeah.
Hearthstone, I think he got a couple of reveals where just try to do something different and entertaining, and it's a lot.
It is. It is a lot to do every time. And when you're doing it like 3 or 4 times a year or something, it becomes really draining to keep doing it.
Nicolina did a really cool one, and then she disappeared. It's also too. It's like Blizzard. Like we're still trying to get ourselves into the creator program. We're like on the borderline of the next whatever they're doing, and
For some
it's
reason, I assumed
just
you were in there already, Tito.
we
That
should
must be
be
the one
right. There's
Discord
only
you're not in.
5 podcasts. Get the podcasts all in there. That's all I'm saying. No, we can't complain because Blizzard and Team 5 and all that, they do take care of us even if we're not in the program. We still
Yeah.
we're invited to events, we get things, we do things, we get to give things out to the community. It's a wonderful thing. But just get us in the community, please. But anyway,
Look, honestly, like the way that the creator program in the past may have had more benefits to it than it does now. I think especially after Hat left, there were a couple of leaks. So a lot of stuff's locked down. There isn't that much advantage to actually being in the creator program anymore, other than the kudos for being in it. Like for example, whatever the upcoming balance changes are, there is a tag in the creator program called press, and those are the people that run websites or are really big streamers who will be YouTubers who will be making videos. Those people know what the balance changes are already, but I don't know what they are yet because they haven't shared them with the general populace in the creator program.
and it's
I
interesting
will
because
probably see them the day before. It's not
we were
really that useful,
invited
but
to
it is at least a
BlizzCon
little
as
bit useful for
press.
me.
We were invited to
Yeah, right,
BlizzCon
so-
as press, but we can't make it because it was just a little like it just wasn't able to work
Yeah.
out. But we're considered press, which is great.
Yeah,
So
so you are seen and
Oh, we are
considered by
100% seen.
Blizzard, so it's great, right? Like, but I don't think there's a lot to gain from having you in the creator program for you, and also for Blizzard, right? Because I think they've just been like, well, we need to limit the number of people in there because like it's become a bit of a leaky ship at times. And I
Maybe,
don't
but-
think it's any of the people that we know, but
But
too
get rid of
many
the
people
people
can
that
make
don't make-
more of a risk.
Get rid of the people that don't make content anymore. We still make content. We're making effort. We're working on it. We get wonderful things. No complaints. Zero complaints. Alkali takes care of us. Hat took care of us when he was doing things. We are 182 episodes in. We are proven that we are here. We're
all?
not going away. Yeah, I'm sorry, Mr. 1673.
No, not quite that high. 1,629 was the last one.
Oh, I'm sorry. Next week
Yeah,
it'll
give
be
it a couple of weeks and I'll be up to 73, I'm sure.
But it's one of those things. It's just like we just want to get in there. We just because it's just kind of like it's a legitimacy.
It'll
thing.
be it'll be disappointing if you do for you. You'll get in there and you'll be like, this is it? Okay, cool. I mean, the only thing it gives you really is the fact that you are technically in a chat with other people who are known creators, and
you get those boxes. I want those boxes. I want the cookies. I want the hoodies. I want the thing. Come on, baby, let's go.
Well, yeah. I don't know. Once you've received a bunch of those, they are less exciting.
Oh, trust me, I will still be excited.
The first one though, I get you. The first one would be pretty sweet.
Okay, but you've mentioned a little bit about how like you're on the other side of the world and like they were giving it to magicians and all that. So you're over in Australia and you're 12 hours apart from everybody else. And what's the audience like in Australia? And like how is it
Minimal.
weird? How is it weird that is it weird for you that your audience is mostly in America and Europe? And how does that whole dynamic work for you?
It's weird. So there are definitely people in Australia who play Hearthstone, but they're just not as connected to the space. Like at the most recent pre-release, there was one of my opponents. He hadn't been playing Magic long, and I helped him rebuild his deck afterwards. And I pulled out my drink bottle, and it was a Hearthstone drink bottle because they always give us drink bottles with these things that they don't sell. Send Tito. So I have this Hearthstone drink bottle. He goes, "Oh, Hearthstone." I was like, "Oh yeah, yeah." So Blizzard sent me this, and I was trying not to say you should look up my podcast or you should look up my videos, but I was like, when Blizzard revealed stuff for the latest expansion, I was in one of those videos. They sent me stuff. I was trying to downplay it a little bit, but like most people in Australia don't follow that stuff as closely. Before COVID, I went to multiple fireside gatherings, and each time I went to one, I saw people I didn't see at the next one. Like there's just a whole bunch of people, and they all definitely played Hearthstone and enjoyed it. They just weren't as serious as maybe we
Mhm.
are about the competitive side of it. So there's definitely an audience for it here, but they're not as, I guess, thirsty for podcasts or competitive Hearthstone or anything like that. And because a lot of my audience had been overseas, so I think the secret is in Australia, they do not care for my accent because it is their accent, give or take. It's close. Whereas in America, I have interesting novelty accent from down under. I speak funny. It's hilarious because he's funny and speaks funny. And sometimes I even put on an Australian accent to be even funnier. Or at least I think I am. My wife would tell you that he's definitely not funny. You should not entertain it. Like don't encourage him. Anyway, um, I think part of the reason I have an audience overseas is because I'm unusual. Like Steve Irwin, like the what was he called? The crocodile
Mhm.
hunter or whatever he was. Like he does things that other people do, but it was entertaining because he did it with a very cartoony Australian accent. Part of me likes to believe that he didn't have as strong an accent behind closed doors. I bet he probably did. But like part of the endearing appeal to a character like that is part of the fact that it's an Aussie bloke, whereas I'm not technically an Aussie bloke, but who can tell the difference overseas, right? So I think it's not weird to me, and it is partly the I guess the as I said the engagement I crave is with the other side of the world, but it's not strange to me that a lot of my audience is in Europe and in the US because it just doesn't seem like the kind of thing that Australian people do. And also to them, I'm Australian and New Zealand people. I'm not as special. I mean, I do have listeners from Australia and New Zealand, definitely, but like, I'm not surprised that. I mean, also, Australia has 24 million people. That's not that many people. So even if I have, I think 3 or 4 listeners or something that I know of, like active members of the community who are from Australia, it doesn't feel like very many, but that's actually probably contextually about right, given 300 odd million people in the US versus less than 30 million people in Australia.
We've actually had one of those 3 on. We had Dimsdale on, and we talked
Oh,
about,
you did? Yeah, he's great. I knew him from Magic long before I played Hearthstone. So he played Magic competitively. He's from the North Island, I was from the South Island. So we would only see each other at the national championships. But that's how we got to know each other a
so we
very, very long time ago.
so we had a show that when I was a kid was from Australia that was on TV, and it was called Dot the Kangaroo. And in the middle of Dot the Kangaroo, from I know you're from New Zealand, not Australia, but in the middle of Dot the
I don't know
Kangaroo,
this show.
there was this thing called the bunyip. I'm gonna send it to you afterwards.
Oh, yeah.
And it was this very spooky thing, and it was like
Mm.
in a kid's show, and it traumatized all of us.
It's
And like,
definitely
if
a
you
part of Australian folklore, I think. I think it's definitely a real thing. Not necessarily a real thing, but it's a real part of Australian folklore, as it were.
but if you look at all the comments on YouTube, every single comment was, "This traumatized me as a child. Why did they put this in a kid's show? How is this?" I'm
Yeah.
gonna send it to you right after we're done.
Yeah. No, I'd love it. I mean, because it's probably a very real thing for Australian kids. I think. I mean, I didn't know it because I grew up in New Zealand. So, I mean, the thing with New Zealand is that it can only produce so much television for itself. So, we did have a lot of Australian TV growing up, and we had a lot of American and English TV as well. Which is interesting because I know for you growing up, you will have had American TV largely, and that's it. You didn't have a lot of English stuff, whereas we had a mixture of both, and of course Australian stuff. One of my favorite things was an Australian ad that we would have for swimming pool safety. It was clearly filmed in Australia. And what was shocked me was when I moved to Australia and I asked people here about it. I live in New South Wales, where Sydney is, and nobody knew this ad. I was like, oh, I get it now. Australia is big enough that they have different regions, they have different ads from different areas. And if they film an ad in Queensland, up near where Brisbane is, it doesn't necessarily air down here in Sydney or down in Victoria for Melbourne and things like that. So it was this little kid who goes, "Hey, beak person, do I look like a fish?" And then the kid goes, looking like a fish. "I'm a kid, just a kid. And if I fall in the water, I'm in big trouble." And I used to think it was hilarious because it was such a pronounced Australian ad. So it was airing in New Zealand. You go, well, that's clearly from Australia. And so I came over and I was like, "So does everyone know the Hey Big Person ad?" And they're like, "What are you talking about?" I was like, "What? How did you not know this? This clearly wasn't filmed for New Zealand. Maybe it's from Western Australia or something." Western Australia is further from Sydney than New Zealand is from Sydney. Like, it's
Did
hilarious.
there's this whole thing. So we had a friend. I had a friend that did another podcast called that was a fan podcast of another podcast, and he told me all about this character you guys have called Fat Cat down in Australia. And I think I tried to explain it to you, and you're like, I have no idea what you're talking about. For him, it was
I
like
do
this
have
big
no idea what
deal.
you're talking about.
And we had this conversation before, but
I don't remember it, but I mean, yeah, like there's a lot of stuff that didn't make it from Australia to New Zealand, and often, like I've been living here nearly 18 years, and so I've constantly got Australians go, "Oh, so you remember this, right? Like from when you were in primary school?" I'm like, "I was in primary school in a different country, mate. I don't remember that at all." That is, oh yeah, I forget you're from New Zealand. It's like, yeah.
Mhm.
So there's a lot of stuff that didn't cross over, and some stuff that did.
So
It was
yeah.
great fun.
So if you could start your journey all over as a creator, would you still do it? And would there be anything that you would do differently?
So that's a difficult one because if I can start it over again, I
Hmm.
would. Yes, I would, because obviously what I want is the engagement. So I definitely would do it again. And if I was starting it over again, knowing what I knew now, there's clearly a lot of things I would do differently, but largely because when I started as a content creator, it was 20 years ago and the world was very different.
Yeah.
And I do definitely wonder about what my life would be like if instead of meeting my wife now and moving to Australia and starting a family, if instead I just started streaming at that point. I probably could have if I had not met her. I was connected enough. So there's a well-known Slay the Spire streamer called Stephen Flavel. He goes by Joan Urbs, I think his name is. I knew him through Magic a long time ago. He's crashed on my sofa a couple of times, like he's a friend of mine. I probably could have gotten set it up streaming around the time he was as well, and could have had a leg up doing that, but I didn't. But if I was starting all over again now and had the time and energy to be able to do that kind of thing, I probably could, and I'd probably be able to utilize connections that even though we're assuming starting in means I don't have that many connections, I've got connections I can lean on. So there are definitely things I would do differently, but I don't regret anything that I've
Mhm.
done. It was a different time, so things don't translate as well. But yeah, I would definitely do it
Yeah.
again. Like I love having a community to hang out with. It's so
speaking of
lonely
not
down here.
speaking of not regretting things you've done, tell us about your time as a heavy metal legend.
Oh, how can I possibly regret that? I got into heavy metal when I was in my early childhood to teens. Learned to play guitar. Played guitar with friends at high school. We made a band. We played in a band on stage around Christchurch, where I grew up in New Zealand. And then stopped because that's just how that happens. Real life catches up with you. You don't do it anymore. But I loved it. So I still have guitars over in the corner of the room. I still play them sometimes.
Play your last
In
riff.
retrospect, I wasn't as good as I thought I was. What's funny is when I learned guitar, I got guitar lessons when I was like 8. My parents said I needed guitar lessons, and the guitar teacher said that I had really good pitch, I had a really good ear, and my brother had really good rhythm. And at the time, I was like, "Oh, what a zing on my brother!" But in retrospect, actually, he may have really good rhythm. I had
Mhm.
terrible rhythm, and the guitar teacher was definitely being selective about that. Ray has a good ear, not so good on the
Yep.
rhythm. And it's like, so even to this day, a lot of what I'm trying to get better at musically is understanding rhythm a little better. I think I'm not very good at keeping time. I understand rhythm a lot better now, but if you were to ask me to maintain a beat for like a minute, I'd probably I'd have sped it up by the time we got to the end of the minute. Like I'm just terrible at it. I would not be a very good drummer, and part of me wishes I could be. But I have no regrets about being that, and having long hair and playing in a metal band. It's great. I'm going to see one of my favorite metal bands later in under a month. It's going to be fantastic.
Fun. Ooh.
Oh, Tito knocked his mic over. Oh, he's broken it. Oh, I mean, good thing we have
Yeah.
me on, right? I mean, look, Pylet, don't get me wrong. I'm sure you can vamp,
So
right? But if you want someone who can just keep talking, I'm on it. I mean, currently it's muted
yeah,
though, Tito. I can see from the light on your mic it's currently muted. So
What
if you
there we
can
go.
band
try,
were you talking about?
the band that I'm going to see is called Electric Callboy. They are a German metal party band who do ostensibly joke music. Like they take the music seriously, and it is good music, but also a lot of the time they're being a bit tongue in cheek with a lot of it. And they've gotten big by doing funny videos. They basically understood that how to be popular as a musician is to do videos that will go viral on YouTube, and they mastered that. So I'm really looking forward to seeing them in Sydney mid-September. It's gonna be great. Look, I've got some fancy head earplug things that I need to mold and get set to my ears. Hearing protection. I used to, like little rubber things you stick in
Yep.
your ears that like tradies would have when they're using
Hmm.
power tools. Like I had those, but I know that it muffles the sound, and I know I need to wear it because the time I did spend in a band, I have
Yep.
damaged my hearing. If I go out into the country and it's quiet, I can hear the ringing in my ears, and that's not great.
As
So I know
as
I need to wear
somebody
hearing protection.
as
You've got it
somebody
as
that
well.
was as somebody that was field artillery and somebody
Yeah.
that lived in a so when you're deployed, you're usually in a space where you're operating 24 hours and people are always in coming and going and you are trying to sleep. Silicone earplugs and form-fitting earplugs that like get there are huge. It is so
So
important.
when I was doing Magic coverage, like going to events, like I get flown to Taiwan or whatever, like they save a bit of money. You often share a room with another person, probably one of the judge staff or the referee staff or whatever. So you definitely had to bring earplugs with you because 9 times out of 10, that other nerd is going to be snoring. Or maybe I was snoring as well. I don't know. But I had earplugs for those trips. But I know, like, because it's been a while since I've been to a decent concert because of COVID and everything. But I knew I'm a grown up now. I can afford to get myself some decent hearing protection that won't
Yeah.
stifle the sound. So hopefully it's going to sound good. I need to spend some time, probably this coming weekend, putting these things into hot water to mold them to my ears and things. But I'm excited about that.
Yeah. So you've alluded to it a few times here. Our last question. What's something that our listeners might find surprising about you?
So this is the worst part because the answer is a complete non-answer because there's nothing the listeners would find surprising about me because I am not shy about sharing. So there's nothing I have told anyone that I want them to know that they don't already know, in theory, right? I constantly talk and I'm constantly open to sharing about it. But the thing, and I've told this before, but I'll tell it again, but I think encapsulates this the best. My dear grandmother, long departed, long time ago, turned to my mother when I was 2, and she sweetly said to her, "Does he ever stop talking?" So if you thought the introduction of the internet and me finding an audience is what got me to be verbose, no, no, no. I was already like this. I was like this in school. I was a class clown. I was always performing. I was always talking. Get me in a group situation, I'm probably talking more than is like appropriate. So the advent of the internet and the advent of podcasting, or even websites that you could write for and somebody could listen, it was a natural fit for me. I was going to be like that. And so, when people talk about or AI is going to replace our jobs or whatever else, which I also don't think is technically true. But like, you know what? I don't know that AI is going to be able to replace the fact that I can just
Yeah.
talk. I can
Mhm.
talk the hind legs off a horse or whatever. I can just keep going. I'll be fine if I can keep doing that. And I don't think AI is going to be able to replicate my nonsense very well. So I think I'm going to be okay on that front. The trick is just figuring out how to do it. So I don't think there's anything. I don't think there's anything that people don't know about me already that I'm willing to share. Like everything else would be horrible private information that nobody wants to hear. But yeah, my grandma spotted it. She was the first one to notice when I was a very little child that I was not stopping talking.
All right, well, we have one final question that we always ask our guests, and you know what it is.
I
So,
do.
what is your favorite dessert? Is it pineapple
Uh,
upside down
a
cake or a Foster's?
No, no. Oh god, I don't even drink beer. It is a warm chocolate brownie with vanilla ice cream. And can also have like I would quite happily have fresh raspberries on it or raspberries mixed because sometimes people will cook a brownie with raspberries in it. I love some raspberries in there as well. But warm chocolate brownie, vanilla ice cream. And someone's gonna be like, "Would you like whipped cream on that?" No, sir. No whipped cream. Do not like whipped cream. Can't stand the texture. Don't know why. I like ice cream. Don't like whipped cream. Don't get it. Do you like caramel sauce? I mean, you could put a caramel sauce on it, but if you gave me the option, I would say no, thank you. It's just the vanilla ice cream, the warm chocolate brownie, and some raspberries. Ooh, love it.
Fair enough. Well, if you'd like
I
to,
knew that was the last question. I've heard every time you ask someone, I'm like, as soon as they ask it, I don't care what the other person on the podcast says because now I'm thinking about a warm chocolate brownie and vanilla ice cream. I was like, I know that one time they're going to get me on the podcast and I'm going to get to say it. I want one now. I mean, it's probably because it's lunchtime now in Australia. I'm hungry.
you
So
had an
like,
opportunity though. You knew you were coming on for a couple weeks now. You could have had one ready to go. You can be like, I like a warm.
the recording thing here says we've been going for an hour and 52 minutes, which I'm not shocked. That is what I
Yep.
expected. A warm chocolate brownie, because it is still technically winter here in Australia, would now be cold, and the ice cream would no longer be ice cream. So it's not something I can have handy, sadly. Also, it'd be irresponsible to have that. But yes, yeah. So anytime, every year when my birthday rolls around, my wife knows full well that I don't want a cake, I want brownie, and there's got to be vanilla ice cream ready to go. That's what makes me happy.
For the last 35 years, that's what he's wanted.
35 years. Well, not really, because to be clear, I am 48 years old, so I'm almost as old as Tito, but clearly not as old as Tito. Just going to get the zing in while we're at it. But brownies were not a thing that we knew of in New Zealand when I was a kid. So I was all about chocolate cake when I was a kid. I can't remember when I first discovered brownies, when they were first introduced in New Zealand, as it were. but I think it was definitely in the last 15 to 20 years at most. But once I found it, I was like, oh, this is like chocolate cake, but more dense. Oh, amazing. I like something that bites back when you chew it. Like cake is just too fluffy now in retrospect. Loved it as a kid, but it's because I didn't know better.
I that is weird to me because like brownies have been a thing like all my life. So it's like to even think about that wasn't a thing. That's just crazy.
I mean, there's a lot of things that you will take for granted because you grew up in the States. And I'm not going to, this is not critique of you. It's not your fault. You grew up in the States. That's all you knew, right? And so when people say, like, what do you think of Jolly Ranchers? I'm like, never had them. Like, what do you mean you've never had them? Like, I've encountered plenty of American people through Magic coverage who are like, yeah, but you've had a ding dong, right? I'm like, I don't even know what you're talking about. That sounds quite rude, actually. Like all these things. Like, what's the little candy thing like in Zombieland, the movie they're trying to find? Little Tootsie Rolls or something. I don't know what they are. We
Tootsie
just don't
Rolls,
have them
maybe.
down here. We don't have that stuff in New Zealand and Australia. Like supermarkets will carry some international stuff now if you're looking for it, but it's not what I grew up with. The stuff I grew up with, you've probably also never heard of. Like small continuity error in the TV show The Good Place, right? The Good Place, fantastic TV show, very philosophical, hilarious as well. But at some point, one of the characters is somehow moved to Australia and is lecturing down under and is losing his mind in front of the lecture theatre. And he's making a pot of chili. It's not really a thing we do down under very much. And he throws peeps into the chili. I know what peeps are, but you have to really seek them out in Australia. You don't just go into a supermarket and find peeps. So I was like, oh, continuity error. That's not what you would be doing if in a lecture theatre in Australia. You wouldn't have peeps to throw into a chili pot.
Well, I mean,
So,
that's
there you
fair.
go.
I mean, you guys don't have Jolly Ranchers and Peeps. We don't have common sense gun laws. I mean, it is what it is. But if you'd like
No.
to support the if you'd like to support the podcast, you can do so by joining us over at patreon.com/breadandbutterhs, where you have access to the raw audio early, access to our member channel on Discord. You can help shape future questions. If you'd like to help us in a non-financial way, just tell people about us. Let us know. We operate an obelisk scheme, excuse me. You don't have to tell two people, just tell one person. Say, hey, this is a great show. You should listen to it. There's only 5 podcasts out there as far as we can understand. So, point them to work, but then also make sure you show us show us some love too. And our patron of the month this month is Warmac. We appreciate you, my friend. And you can leave us a review. It helps. And look for us at Bread and Butter HS on YouTube. Blister Guy, where can people find you if they'd like to find you out there in the world?
Just generally the name blisterguy, at blisterguy, wherever it is. I may not post on all the platforms, but ideally I have at blisterguy. That's where you find me. If I do post anything, it's probably on Blue Sky these days. But I have a Discord channel. I won't share it here. If you listen to my podcast, Walk to Work HS, on any podcast feed, I'd be surprised if you didn't know it already. But if you do, like, there's a link to the Discord in there. You'll find it. That's the best place to catch up with me. Yeah, at blisterguy, wherever you can find me.
And Pilot, where can people find
You
you?
can find me Pylet712 Pylet on Twitter and Blue Sky, as well as in the Bread and Butter Discord and a handful of other Hearthstone ones as well. Tito?
And you can find me at Tito Santana HS on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, TikTok, and anywhere fine leather goods are sold. Blister Guy, is there anything you'd like to shout out
Sorry,
or
are you
promote this
referring to
week?
yourself as a fine leather good?
I think
I
so.
know I made a joke about you being old, but not that leathery.
Depends on how much sun I get. Where can people find? You have anything you'd like to shout out or promote this week?
No. Other than the podcast, which I'm woefully reticent at promoting at the best of times. But yeah, check out the podcast. If you thought I was entertaining here today, maybe you'll enjoy me in smaller doses, such as 30 minutes, which is what my podcast tends to end up being. Check that out.
Okay, I will warn everybody though. If you listen to Blister Guy's podcast, which you should, I tend to listen to most of my podcasts at 1.5 speed. Do not do that when you first start getting used to listening to Blister Guy because you will be super tired by the end of the episode. Start at 1 and then work it up.
Also, because I'm walking and I tend to end up walking uphill by the end of it, I'm also out of breath at certain points in the podcast. And I know that used to wind up Tito as well. But I had the same thing. Like, as soon as we started the music for this episode, I was like, why is the music so slow? Oh, right, because we listen to podcasts faster than they actually are. I was like, wow, this music is so slow. Like, I was starting to bop along to it. I was like, oh, I've got the timing wrong. No wonder my guitar teacher was right about my rhythm. Gosh.
No, it definitely is a thing. It definitely is a thing. It's the same thing happens with Coin Can See It. It's like I'm used to the and then you listen to it normal like live, it's like
Yeah, right. But then you have correctly chosen this pace of your music for this. You've slowed it down because you know that everyone's going to listen to it at a faster speed.
Absolutely. Pilot, anything like to shout out or promote this week?
I'm just gonna give a shout out to my parents who celebrated their anniversary yesterday.
Heck yeah. And I'm going to, Ray, thank you for being here. Thank you for dealing with the fact that we accidentally misscheduled things. I felt really bad about that. We would have figured out a way to work it out, but I'm glad you were here. And yeah, and even you were even sick and you were like, I'm gonna do this no
Yeah.
matter what. But given now that we know that you can do it Monday sometimes, maybe we can get you on and we actually talk about a main topic.
Yeah, one day I'll find. I will definitely let you know because clearly I will actually let you know if it frees up. My schedule frees up to do it. Um, yeah, I was worried last night. Actually, my voice was really going before I went to bed last night. I was like, "Oh, this could be a problem." But when I woke up this morning, I said to my kids, "What do you want for breakfast?" I was like, "Well, that came out smooth enough. We could be okay."
Oh,
So I'm
don't
glad it
even worry
worked.
about it.
Understand that
Normally, what
feeling as a
happens
teacher.
is
Yeah.
normally what
Oh
just
God,
happens
yeah. Oh,
is, hey, we had a guest canceled. Hey, World 8, can you come on?
Yeah.
Sure.
yeah,
Great. We're good. So I'm gonna shout
yeah.
out World
Vicious
8 for
Syndicate
being super
podcast on
flexible.
hiatus. He's good to go. Yeah.
Yeah, no, but now we just gotta get him editing and we'll be good. But anyway, guys, I think we're toast. We'll see ya.
See ya.
Take care, everyone.
Slide two brothers meet one another when they slide up to the mic. It's bread and butter with one another. Let's start up that recording light.